Chapter 9. Hidden deep within the Middle Eastern desert on the border of Saudi Arabia and the UAE was a majestic palace that would make the sultans and pharaohs of old jealous. With high walls and towers made of sandstone leading up to golden curved roofs and hidden from view by a ridiculous array of high-powered seals. The home of the Ikibi, Sabuku no Gara, was a breathtaking sight. It was here within a rather large room that 9 individuals could be seen sitting around a table with rather scantily clad women acting as waitresses. They had been talking for the last 45 minutes, each engrossed in various conversations before their host cleared his throat, effectively bringing the room's attention to himself. Brothers, sisters, I thank all of you for joining me. I know it can be quite difficult for all of us to meet up as each of us are busy with our own projects. Started Gara as he looked around at his gathered siblings. True. However, you have to admit, ever since we discovered how to traverse realities, we've all learned quite a bit. Stated Haku. Which leads me to my point. Now, while I believe we would all like to continue the lightness of our impromptu reunion, I would like to take this time to inform you all of why I called you all here. Stated Gara, causing each of them to turn serious eyes upon him. As you all know, several days ago several of the children were playing around, and managed to break something. Said Gara. Please tell me it wasn't the mirrors. Stated Yugito with a frown. No, the mirrors of destiny are still intact. Just in case, however, I've upgraded the security parameters in order to prevent any accident with those. Said Gara, getting several of them to relax. The mirrors of destiny were giant mirrors that would allow significant events of a person's life to be shown. They were operated by the Moirai, the trinity known as the Greek goddesses of fate. However, Gara, as the only one who didn't have a desire to tamper with time, was the one in who supervised them. What they did break, however, could be considered worse. In this case, it was several reality spheres. Stated the redhead. What? The exclamation had come from all of them at once. How many? Questioned Roshi, his hands coming up to massage his head as a headache was already forming. An entire shelf. Said Gara, causing several of them to wince. Any standouts? Questioned Utakata. The Potter verse, Marvel verse, DC Universe, and Charmed verse among others. Said Gara. Fuck. The solitary curse form the resident kitsune did much to describe the feelings of everyone in the room. So how do we fix this? Questioned the Nine-Tails, already dreading Prue's reaction to this news. After all, one of them was her home reality. They can't be fixed, not as they were. As such, the plan is to fuse all the pieces together. I've got several people already to help with it. There's just one thing extra I need. Stated Gara, causing everyone to look at him warily. The original gods of those worlds all need to be replaced. As such, I need copies of all of your godly aspects to place there. Said Gara. All of them? Questioned Naruto, shocked. Not all of yours. I just need the Greek, Roman and Norse gods. I would also like copies of your mortal aspects to place there. Said Gara. The place will be a powder keg and we all have things we are attending to now. How do you plan to monitor the place? Questioned Haku. Our predecessors have all agreed to go monitor for a while, as have several of our less powerful comrades. Stated Gara, catching the attention of all of them. For a while all of them were silent until with a sigh Naruto held out his right hand. It crackled with power before an orb appeared in his hand, the power of the storm flowing freely within it. For several moments he was still before the orb was encased in glass before he sat it down before him on a cushion he had wordlessly conjured. I'll be sending someone along as well. Expect her in the next few days. Said Naruto, getting a nod from Gara. With his agreement apparently given, all of them did the same, creating orbs of power which they then sat down. We will be speeding up the progress of the word to catch up to modern times. Once that is done, you'll all be free to enter the new reality at your leisures. Said Gara. Naruto said nothing, however, instead wordlessly creating a clone which quickly vanished in golden orbs while he himself motioned the waitress over, who placed a bottle of sake down before him. The 9 siblings would spend the night together, each of them incredibly drunk, before separating again in the morning. Yugito would be happy, as at least this time no new religion would be founded. While Naruto was off on other business in Mystic Falls, certain people were left dealing with the aftermath of the night's activities. One such person was Matt, who was sitting inside of the ER waiting room. Apparently the accident had hurt the girl far more than they had initially thought, leaving her with some internal injuries. As such, it was no surprise that Bonnie and Elena found him sitting with his head in his hands when they entered. "How is she?" questioned Bonnie. "Not good," said the teen, running a hand through his hair. "They had to do an emergency surgery. I don't even know if she woke up, but they just took her for another one," explained Matt. "What happened?" questioned Elena. "We were driving when suddenly Tyler heard this noise. He got a migraine or something and lost control of the car," started Matt, unable to finish before he was pulled into a hug by Elena. While this was happening, Elizabeth Forbes was standing at the hospital's desk with a cup of coffee in hand when Damon made his appearance. "Liz, I came as soon as I got your message. How is she?" questioned Damon, surprising himself by being actually concerned. "She's in surgery. They're doing everything they can, but I need your help," said Liz, her voice coming out softly. "Sure, anything," answered Damon, only for her to pull him off to the side. "Mayor Lockwood is dead. Someone thought he was a vampire and put him in the basement." Well, that was news to him. While he knew the man wasn't a vampire, the fact that someone managed to mistake him for one and basically kill him was something he hadn't thought could happen. A mistake was made. They said he dropped like the others when John's device went off, but he couldn't have been a vampire. I've known the man my whole life, and now Carol Lockwood is gonna want answers, and all I can think of right now is Caroline, and," started the woman before she couldn't take it anymore and broke down. The morning found Naruto standing alongside many others and standing before an empty grave in the Inglewood Park Cemetery, located in Los Angeles County. For this occasion was in his regular adult form, though minus the whisker marks, and had arrived in a 1967 Shelby Mustang GT 500 fastback painted green with white stripes. At the moment he wore a black three-piece suite with a pair of Prada aviator sunglasses with a gray frame and black legs with a gray stripe. He stood with a young woman named Mia tucked into his side, her body shaking with sobs as the casket was slowly lowered into the grave. Despite his occupation caring for his friend, he was still aware of the FBI agents currently littering the cemetery with their presence. "Amateurs," thought the blonde in disgust. People truly had fallen far since his third life. The first time through as a sewer, they had lived in a mostly peaceful time, and as such had no need to spy on others. In his second run through as Hashirama, they had lived in the midst of the great clan wars, and as such things such as stealth and spying had become necessities. By the time he'd incarnated as Naruto, however, his people had mastered the arts of war for their time, becoming skilled spies, assassins, and masters of the art of capture and interrogation. While the human race had fallen greatly since that time, the fact these people were lacking in common sense was the most annoying to his sensibilities. After all, it should be fairly obvious that someone like Dominic Toretto would not just walk into a place where he knew he would be arrested, especially in a situation such as this. Nearly an hour later found him sitting within the passenger seat of a Toyota Corolla looking over the contents of a file. He had left Mia at the repast, explaining he had some things to look into and that he would catch up with her in a bit. Across from him within the driver's seat sat a man who appeared to be somewhere in his early 30s with short-cut brown hair and eyes with a very light shade of blue. "I want eyes on her at all times. If she ever gets in over her head, I want her pulled out," said the blonde after closing the file and sliding it into a backpack that sat open between his feet. "Of course. We have an asset we can put in play as a bodyguard," said the man to his left. "Good. Make sure they know her safety is of the utmost importance to me," said Naruto, getting a nod. "What about Agent Carter's case?" "We were thinking of sending Jason in," said the man. "Send Ethan." "Sir, Ethan is currently on assignment undercover," said the man, looking down at a tablet. "I know what he's doing, Brant. However, this takes priority. We need one of our best on this. Jason is currently stateside and Ethan is already in the area," said Naruto. "I see, I'll have it done," said the man, getting a nod before Naruto exited the car. "Oh, and William," called the blonde, turning back and getting the man's attention. "You'll be part of the team for this one. You've got the best eyes in the business, it's time to put them to work," said Naruto, closing the door before the man could respond. As he walked through the garage, he slipped around a corner into a small blind spot of the security camera. His form almost instantly disappeared in a flurry of orbs. Sometime later, Naruto could be found standing upon the roof of an apartment complex. He had been standing in the same place for nearly 3 hours, his arms crossed as he looked down into the window of the building across from him, his eyes not wavering. The target of his gaze was a man by the name of David Park, and while not one that he truly cared about in the grand scheme of things, he was simply a cog. However, in the current predicament, he knew this cog had a bit of importance, and it was only a matter of time before others realized it. As if summoned by the mere thought, which was a distinct possibility, the door was suddenly kicked open, nearly coming off the hinges as another individual entered the room. The man who entered stood at 6 feet even in height and was in possession of a muscular frame with a bald head that looked as if it was nearly time for a new shave. The man was Dominic Toretto, Dom as he knew him, an old friend. He watched as Dom grabbed and held David by his throat against a wall when the man had tried to run. He was held there for only a few seconds before he was thrown to the ground, where he scrambled backwards, obviously pleading, before Dom got fed up. Once again he grabbed him, only this time instead of holding him to the wall he threw the man through the window and proceeded to dangle him by his leg. "I see someone's been studying Batman-style interrogation," mused Naruto, not the least bit bothered by the sight. As he held the man there, Naruto listened to the sounds of David squealing his guts out, revealing everything to the man who literally held his life in the palm of his hands. He was only held there for a few minutes, however, maybe 3, before Naruto spotted another individual enter the room with a pistol in hand. This one had short blonde hair and stood at 6 feet 2 inches, wearing a regulation federal agent black suit. "The Buster's right on time," mused the kitsune, smirking and deciding it was time to make his own presence known. As stood still for a moment before his body flickered and he vanished, only to reappear behind the man with the gun. "You here to take me in, O'Connor?" questioned Dom, his voice low and nonchalant as if he dangled people from windows regularly. "Shut up," yelled Dom, turning his attention back to David, who was steadily pleading for his life. "Letty was my friend too," said the cop. "You weren't anyone's friend," retorted Dom quickly. "I wouldn't go that far. Now bring him inside and let's talk," said Naruto, deciding to speak up, causing both to pause before Dom brought the man in and tossed him to the floor. "Who the hell are you?" questioned the cop, turning the gun his way only for Naruto to ignore him altogether. Instead, he turned his attention to David, walking over to him and faster than anyone could react, pinching a nerve in the back of his neck, knocking the man out. As the man collapsed, Naruto caught him easily before lowering him to the ground. "What do you know?" questioned Dom. "A few weeks back, Letty was arrested in connection with a gang that had been robbing gas tankers. They were all set to send her upstate for a while when O'Connor here approaches his boss. He's been working on a case against a guy named Arturo Braga and offers Letty a deal. She goes undercover and infiltrates this cartel as a driver, and the FBI will wipe her record. She agreed. He then went back to his bosses and stated she accepted, with the caveat that they wipe yours as well," said Naruto, causing Dom to tense up. It was a good plan, and would have worked too. Unfortunately, what O'Connor didn't know was that there was a mole inside the FBI. This mole works for a guy who was Braga's mentor. The mole tipped off his boss, who then tipped off Braga, which resulted in what happened to Letty," explained Naruto, handing Brian the folder he'd received earlier. "How do you know all this?" questioned Brian. "I've had my people watching you since you let Dom go. They were watching you in Miami, when they feds came and recruited you 2 years ago. They were watching you when you got Mia away from the feds a few days ago and made it so that she was left alone," said Naruto. "They went after Mia?" questioned Dom, his voice a growl. "An agent thought he could use her against you." O'Connor took exception and made an example of him. "I'd say he was always a friend and just stretched between loyalties," said Naruto. "Now, since my job is done, I think you two can handle the rest. This Braga, how do I find him?" questioned Dom before he could leave. "Simple, that one there gets you into the race," answered Naruto easily. "And what will you be doing?" questioned O'Connor. "I did my part. You ripped our family apart, now you can start making up for it." With that said, the blonde turned and left the room, leaving the two men looking after him before they both turned their gaze to the unconscious Asian on the floor. Back in Mystic Falls within the deeper interior of the hospital, Matt could be seen standing outside of a private room, a cup of coffee in hand and speaking with Bonnie. "You've been here all night?" questioned Bonnie, seeing him wearing the same clothes from the previous night. "Yeah, with the sheriff," answered the young man before taking a sip. "No one else?" questioned Bonnie. "Well, Damon stopped by late last night," said Matt, frowning as Bonnie actually looked pleased at the news. "How is she today?" questioned Bonnie. "See for yourself, but for the record I don't like it," said Matt, motioning to the door. Ignoring the accusation in his tone, Bonnie instead moved to open the door, finding Caroline awake and watching TV. The sound must have caught her attention as she looked over and smiled upon seeing her. "Hey, Harry Potter is on," said Caroline, causing Bonnie to relax before she made her way over to embrace her friend. "Careful, I'm still sore," said Caroline, knowing the strength of Bonnie's hugs but accepting the embrace. Meanwhile, on the other side of town at the Lockwood mansion, Carol Lockwood was engaged in a quiet conversation as she walked through the mansion with the throng of guests who'd come to pay their respects. "I want to know exactly who it was that killed my husband," said the woman. "I'm looking into it, but you have to be straight with me. Is there any reason Richard was affected by the vampire device?" stated and questioned Liz, irritated she'd been called away from her daughter's bedside. "What are you implying? That he was one of them?" questioned Carol. "No one's implying that," stated Damon, having also been called and though secretly entertained by the drama. "Your deputy screwed up, plain and simple, which makes you responsible," said Carol. "Carol," started Damon, only to be cut off. "Your husband is the one who helped John Gilbert execute his idiot plan in the first place," stated Liz. "Liz," tried Damon again, only to once again be cut off, now getting annoyed. "Someone got my husband killed," stated Carol. "We're all on edge here. You've suffered a great loss. The whole town has. We have to stick together, okay? Trust each other, we'll get through this," said Damon, not at all comfortable playing peacemaker and wondering how Stefan could stomach the act for so long. Meanwhile, at the front door, Tyler could be seen greeting the guest who arrived, only to pause upon seeing a new arrival pulling up. The vehicle that caught his attention was a truck, specifically a Ford Bronco XLT, and true to his suspicions, the man who stepped out was one he was very familiar with. Standing at 5 feet 11 was a man with light brown hair and blue eyes, wearing a pair of black slacks and a white dress shirt, the top few buttons of which were undone. "Well, the black sheep returns," said Tyler, his arms crossed over his chest. "Tyler?" questioned the man in surprise. "Yeah. What happened to you?" "In my mind you're 12 years old," said the man. "Well, that's 2 years older than the last time you saw me, Uncle Mason," said Tyler. "Sorry to drag you to this thing," said Bonnie in the passenger's seat of Naruto's Camaro. "No problem. May as well make use of the suit while I still have it on," said Naruto. "So did you find out what happened to your friend?" questioned the girl. "Yeah. Someone tried to kill her. One of my associates found her in Calexico, complete amnesia," said the blonde with a sigh. "You know, you could have stayed with her," said Bonnie. "Couldn't afford to. Catherine's in town," said the blonde, causing her to stop. "I know what you're thinking, so stop. You're nowhere near ready to take her on. I'll deal with her." With that said, he opened the door and got out, effectively ending the conversation. Walking around to the other side, he opened her door and offered a hand to help her out. Accepting it with a smile, Bonnie made sure to give him a quick peck on the cheek before they made their way to the door, where they were greeted by Tyler. After a bit of a tense greeting, the two headed inside to join the throng of people milling about. As they made the rounds, however, Naruto's mind was elsewhere. However, it was brought back to the present when he caught a familiar scent. Following his nose, he soon found himself eyeing someone he didn't recognize. "Bonnie, who's that?" questioned the blonde. "Tyler's uncle, Mason, the mayor's younger brother," said the girl upon recognizing the figure. "Interesting," mused the blonde, quickly coming to a conclusion about what was happening. Movement out of the corner of his eye had him smirking, and as Bonnie went to pay her respects, he made his move. Looking his target over, he found she exactly like Elena, only with a more mature look. There was also the fact that she wore her hair curled and it was actually of a darker shade than Elena's parted on the left. Her choice in makeup was different in that she wore a dark smoky eye with thick winged eyeliner, and her choice in lipstick was a darker, sultry pink in appearance. Her irises seemed to be a shade darker than Elena's, and she squinted slightly while Elena has wide doe eyes. The way she moved was also different, exaggerated, which he knew she used to draw attention. Finally, it was her style of dress. She wore a pair of black super skinny jeans and a black tank top which was covered by a black leather jacket that she wore open and a pair of tall black boots. All in all, it was a look far too mature for Elena. Finishing his inspection as he came up on his target, he grabbed her by the arm just above her elbow, causing her to stop. "Hello, Katerina," said the blonde, getting her to tense, and with a quick glance over her shoulder found herself looking at his face. "Naruto, it's Catherine now," spoke the woman evenly. "Let's talk, shall we?" said the kitsune, linking their arms until they entered an empty room where he proceeded to close the door. As their arms unlinked and he turned around, the woman whirled around and slapped him, causing his head to snap to the left. "Bastard," spoke the woman, whirling to hit him again only for her hand to be caught. "I let you have the first one, don't get cocky," said Naruto, only for her to snatch her arm away. "You deserve worse," said the woman. "This little game you're planning with Damon and Stefan, it ends now," said Naruto evenly. "Why, it's not like you didn't do the same thing to me. Only difference is nobody got pregnant when I did it," said Catherine, nearly snapping at the end. "I told you to wait for me. I just didn't expect your father's reaction," said Naruto. "Didn't expect? I was 16, unmarried and just had a baby. What other reaction did you expect?" said Catherine. "I came back. I got there just 2 weeks after you left," explained Naruto. "And I was already on a ship to England in search of you," realized Catherine, taking a seat. "Why?" questioned Naruto after a moment. "I had heard of your exploits and rumors that you were headed to England while I was in Monteregione," explained the woman. "And then you met Niklas," said Naruto with a sigh. "No, I meet Trevor, who introduced me to Elijah, who introduced me to Niklas," corrected Catherine a touch bitterly. "I wish you'd have told someone who you were. Mario would have taken you in while I was away, and this entire situation could have been avoided," stated Naruto after a few moments. "Another thing that was your fault. I knew you went by Ezio, but I knew you as Naruto. You never talked about your home much and I never pressed," said Catherine. "I've talked to Niklas, he has agreed to leave you be," stated Naruto, getting her eyes to widen before they narrowed. "What did you promise him?" questioned Katerina, knowing it would have to be something substantial. "Some of my people have created a serum to combine 2 different strains of vampire lines. I promised his family the serum which will grant them the ability to have children again," said Naruto, surprising her greatly. "Where's the moonstone?" questioned Naruto after a few moments. "It's here somewhere. I have Mason looking for it. I gave it to George Lockwood and he helped me fake my death," said the woman. "Good, I trust you have a vampire in mind as well?" questioned the man. "I'm working on it," said the vampire, not the least bit surprised he'd figured her out. "Good, I have appearances to maintain. However, I'll see you soon. I thought you already had a replacement for me," said the woman, a touch of bitterness in her tone. "Do I have other lovers? Yes. Is Bonnie one of them? Yes again. You, however, are the mother of my child. You should already know where your place is." "You still want me?" questioned the vampire in surprise. "I've spent the last few centuries ensuring your protection, covering your tracks." "What does that tell you?" said Naruto. "So what, we just pick up where we left off?" questioned Catherine. We could start over, your choice," said Naruto before leaving the room. Katerina sat still for several moments, a soft smile on her face before she wiped her expression and left through the other door, where she would soon run into a distraction by the name of Bonnie, and following that, a reunion with Stefan. That night Naruto sat within the living room of the boarding house, with surrounded as Bonnie, Matt, Stefan, Damon and Elena were all in attendance. Naruto had called the meeting after he had dealt with his other business and decided it was time for some things to come out. All of you have had some interaction with Catherine so far with the exception of Matt and Elena. Catherine will be in town for some time, so I want to get things out in the open. What did you think of her today? Questioned. She seemed different, guarded and even a bit remorseful. There was none of the attempted manipulation I expected, said Stefan. She didn't seem threatening, almost like she was evaluating me, said Bonnie frowning. She seemed the same to me last night, said Damon with a frown. Her plans have changed. Initially she was going to play us against each other again, but something changed her mind. She told me that much, said Stefan, causing Damon's frown to deepen. I first met her in 1487. At the time I was going by the name of Ezio Auditore. Started Naruto, catching the group's attention. The assassin, right? Questioned Matt, getting a gasp from Bonnie and Elena. Yeah, that life was different than most others. Ezio was stillborn in 1459, so I implanted my spirit in his body and sealed my memories. However, when I did that, I created a failsafe. Should I ever get near death due to murder, it would unlock my memories and a portion of my power. Anyway, I had tracked one of the men responsible to Bulgaria, and hadn't realized it was a trap. I was run through with a sword and left to die. Needless to say, that broke the seal. When I awoke, it was to the sight of a young girl of 13. This young girl had discovered my body and upon realizing I was alive had nursed me back to health for nearly a month. Her name was Katerina Petrova. Katerina was much like Elena back then. Naive, but she was also compassionate, caring, empathetic, kind, intelligent and even then very beautiful. She was a noble descending from both Bulgarian and Ottoman royalty, and was also a member of a traveler family. Wait, she was a witch? Questioned Bonnie in surprise. Untrained but had marvelous potential. Her father, however, had other plans for her and felt her having access to magic would derail those plans. Katerina, while she was loyal to her family, felt she could do much better than the spouse that had been picked for her, who she considered even then to be a waste of space. Said Naruto, chuckling softly. One day after my strength had significantly recovered, I asked her what I could do to repay her kindness. She asked that I marry her. I agreed. Revealed Naruto, causing everyone to go wide-eyed in surprise. You didn't, said Elena. I owed her a life debt, something I took very seriously, stated Naruto. She was 13, said Bonnie. Times were different then. Girls were still married young, but she and I didn't marry. I merely agreed to do so in the future, said the blonde. For nearly 3 years I stayed in Bulgaria helping to liberate them from Templar control. In that time I had taught her many things, many tricks she still uses today. How to walk, talk, dress, how to disappear into the crowd. I taught her how to be an assassin. You turned her into a killer, said Elena with a frown. Do not get judgmental on something you don't understand, snapped Naruto, causing the girl to recoil. The Brotherhood of Assassins was an ancient order that I served in. The goal has always been to ensure the continuation of freedom, as there were those who felt humanity could not be trusted with free will, explained the blonde, with only Matt not being surprised by this knowledge. Regardless, I was soon called away on assignment and told Katerina I would return with haste and made off for home and then to England. What was to be a quick mission ended up taking months more than I had anticipated, as my target proved elusive. Eventually I returned to Bulgaria only to find that Katerina had been disowned and exiled by her father and our daughter handed away, stated Naruto with a frown, his fist visibly clenching. What happened to the baby? Questioned Bonnie, frowning. I arrived 2 weeks after Katerina was exiled to find her father attempting to hand the child to another noble family. I beat him bloody, nearly killed him, but spared him at the pleas of his wife and Katerina's younger sister. I took my daughter and using all of the power I could muster I summoned Hinata. With her help we unlocked her heritage and Hinata took her to raise her in our home as I could not raise her myself at the time. Katerina meanwhile went chasing after me, looking for help. She started in my home of Monteriggioni and discovered I was sent to England. While she was there she unfortunately caught the attention of a very old, very dangerous vampire by the name of Klaus. She learned that he planned to sacrifice her in a ritual and in desperation created a plan which turned her into a vampire, and since then has been constantly running. Finished Naruto. Klaus, I've heard that name before. Mused Stefan. You should have, he's one of the originals. Stated Naruto. They're a myth, said Damon immediately. The originals? Questioned Elena. Legend says they're a family of vampires, nearly 1,000 years old, and the first of our kind. Said Stefan. I assure you they are no myth. They are very real and Klaus is everything you've ever heard and more. Said Naruto. I take it that's bad. Said Bonnie. Take Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers, Chucky, Leatherface, Hannibal Lecter and Dracula and put them all together. Said Damon scowling, getting both Elena and Bonnie to blanch while Matt simply scowled. It explains why she would fake her death. Said Stefan. Yes, and it worked too, until someone opened the tomb and let all the vampires out. Said Naruto. That doesn't explain why she turned us. Stated Damon. You asked her to Damon, and Stefan she turned as a gift so you wouldn't be alone. Said Naruto. So what happens now? Questioned Matt. I've taken her under my protection. As such she'll be staying in town for a bit while we try and figure out a next step. However there may come a time when she has to act differently. If that time comes, play along, but know that she has no intention of killing any of you. Said Naruto. Late in the night within the Mystic Falls Hospital within a private room located near the center of the building, Caroline Forbes awoke with a groan of pain. Rolling over to her side she whimpered as fire seemed to shoot through her veins. From the corner of the room the air seemed to ripple as a figure stepped forward and the illusion which hid it fell. Moving over to the girl the figure spoke in soft soothing tones in order to help ease her. Relax, Care. Stop trying to fight it, you'll only make the pain worse. And Naruto. Whispered the girl before wincing in pain. What's wrong with me? Questioned the girl. You're in transition. I'm here to help you through it, just relax. Breathe in and out. Don't try deep breaths, just breathe. Whispered the blonde, pleased when she did as told. Now I'm not going to lie to you, Care. This is going to be quite possibly the most painful feeling you will ever experience. Your entire physical makeup is going to undergo a change and you're going to feel as if your blood has been replaced by acid. Unlike most, this is not a natural form that you're changing into, so your body is literally going to remake itself. When it finishes you'll see the world completely differently. However, for now the best you can do is brace for it. Don't try and fight what's happening, just accept that it is. Caroline throughout his speech had done exactly what he said, constantly breathing in and out at a steady rate, the exercise getting easier as the pain managed and had in fact began to fade, making her believe he had exaggerated. Unfortunately for her, however, she soon learned for herself how truthfully he spoke, as pain unlike any she had experienced before or had even thought possible assaulted her. As the first of her screams tore through the night, Naruto was thankful he'd thought to place seals over the walls to prevent the sounds from being heard. As her bones shattered and changed shape, Naruto found himself thankful that he had never had to go through this particular stage himself. As they had all already been quite thoroughly dead and little more than spirits when they had first transformed, he and the other new Biju and their spouses had all experienced painless transformations. The children's were also painless, mostly because they were born with their extra features. But natural humans who were going through the transformation had all spoke of the pain they felt that first time. Caroline's screams reached a new pitch and he looked over just in time to catch a quick look at her eyes, now forest green in color with slit pupils, and see her opened mouth now filled with razor-sharp fangs before her torso twisted so fast even he winced. In less than 10 minutes it was over and Naruto could see that Caroline was passed out. Of course this wasn't surprising, he'd yet to come across someone who remained conscious after the first transformation. Unlike with werewolves, this transformation was all pain with no rage to accompany it. Thankfully only the first transformation was painful for them, and while the first few might be uncomfortable it was painless, otherwise the numbers would be rather small. Still he made quick work of cleaning Caroline up, as she as well as the place on the floor he'd placed her on had become incredibly bloody. Once that was done he had even done her the favor of changing her back to her original form before placing her back in the bed and taking his leave, orbing out just as the nurse peeked in on her rounds. The early morning found Naruto up bright and early. He was in a pretty good mood, as Prue could attest, though she was currently unconscious with a blissful smile on her face. "So you made a move on Elena," said Naruto as he and Damon stood within a large room within the boarding house. "I did," stated Damon, not looking at him, instead focused on lining up his shot on the pool table. "Why?" questioned the blonde. "Why not?" retorted Damon, letting his shot go only to curse as the three ball bounced off the edge of the border and settled back several inches back from the pocket. "Firstly, she's not Catherine, so you trying to use her as a substitute is just sad," said Naruto, picking up his own cue stick and pocketing the 11 quite easily into the upper left corner pocket. "Secondly, she's not your speed. You would have to change who you are to fit with her, and it wouldn't work out in the end anyway," said Naruto. "Some people are worth changing for, and it could work," said Damon. "It could work for a time, but eventually it would fail. More importantly, you change because you want to, not to please someone else," explained Naruto, pocketing both the 9 and 15 into the middle right and lower left pockets respectively. "So you made a move, and what happened?" questioned Naruto after a moment. "She rejected me," said Damon, gritting his teeth at the memory of the previous night's events. "Right, so in retaliation you decided you would snap Jeremy's neck," said Naruto, a single slit blue eye glancing over to look at the vampire. Honestly, sometimes Naruto wondered if Damon was even capable of being less impulsive. As it was, Jeremy was just lucky that John had gifted him with the Gilbert ring before leaving town. Apparently Stefan and Elena had paid the man a visit in his hospital room. Eventually Elena had left the two alone momentarily, during which time Stefan had told John that if he was not gone within the next 24 hours he would personally turn him. "In my defense, I was drunk," said Damon, quickly breaking Naruto from his thoughts. "You know what your problem is?" questioned Naruto, standing and turning his attention to him. "Problem?" questioned Damon. "You're emotional. Always have been. I guess that's true for most people, but it was always easy for your emotions to take control of you. It's easier for you darker emotions to control your actions, no doubt thanks to that idiot father of yours," said Naruto. "I'm not emotional," said Damon, getting Naruto to snort. "Denying something doesn't make it any less true. Still, at least subconsciously you know there is a better version of yourself. You just need to find yourself your own girlfriend," said Naruto, getting Damon to roll his eyes. Meanwhile at the hospital, Caroline could be found lying awake on her bed, staring up at the ceiling. Unlike the previous day when she woke up, now her entire body felt as if it had become one big bruise. She had awoken initially at around 3 a.m. with her body racked by pain. Unfortunately, she had been starving, and as her buzzer had stopped working for some reason, had been forced to climb out of bed. The nurse, however, had been quite uncooperative when it came to that, more worried about getting her back in the bed than anything else. Once the nurse had left, she had been drawn by a rather strong smell to the room of another patient, only to find herself eyeing a blood bag. While the nurse had soon appeared and escorted the girl to her room, she had waited until she left to withdraw it from the hiding place pinned between her arm and her side. Slowly she had brought the tubing to her lips and, using it like a straw, took a sip only to nearly choke on it and, disgusted, throw it to the ground. The scent, however, had called to her like a siren song, and before she knew it she had descended from the bed and on her knees proceeded to drain nearly the entire bag. After that, sleep had come easy and the pain was now mostly gone, and she'd rather feel a bit sore than the pain she felt during the night. Still, while the blood had helped with the pain, it hadn't really done anything in regards to her hunger. As such, she couldn't wait to get out of here and get some real food. She had of course tried looking outside, only for the sun to nearly blind her, which had her calling her mom so that she would bring her sunglasses with the rest of her things. At the moment, however, she was busying herself with putting on her jewelry. Though the earrings had sucked, as it was like the back of the holes had nearly closed and she'd been forced to get up and move to the mirror so that she could see what she was doing as she worked the stems inside. Now all that remained was the necklace Elena had given her. "Which I can't find," mused the girl, now a bit annoyed with herself and the entire situation. "That's pretty," came the nurse's voice. Turning, she found the nurse standing, having bent over to pick up her necklace from the floor by the bed. "Yeah, my friend gave it to me," said the blonde, accepting the necklace from the nurse. Once she was gone, Caroline turned her attention back to the mirror only to pause upon seeing her eyes flicker from their normal blue-green to forest green before their normal appearance returned. Shaking it off as tricks played by her starved mind and wincing at a brief surge of pain in her tailbone, reached down into the sink and took a small hit from the blood bag. Placing it down, she sighed and running a hand through her hair wondered not for the first time what the hell had happened to her. Her thoughts, however, came to a screeching halt as a new pain came to her face and she could only look on in horror as her teeth began to enlarge and her face looked to be shifting, unknowingly calling the nurse with her pained groaning. "Are you okay?" questioned the nurse as she appeared. Before she even knew what happened, Caroline was in motion, grabbing the woman by the throat and speeding over so that she had the woman pinned to the wall next to the sink and dangling several inches from the ground. "You can't tell anyone," said the girl before forcibly repeating herself as her eyes shifted to forest green with slit pupils. "I can't tell anyone," said the nurse after a moment. "You'll do what I say," said Caroline, panting heavily. "I'll do what you say," repeated the nurse. "Good, because I'm starving," said Caroline. Her incisors shifted to long fangs before she descended on the woman's neck. Meanwhile, at the high school, Bonnie and Elena could be seen hard at work like many others preparing for the day's events. They were actually having a carnival, which was another annual event held by the town. "All I'm is she looked just like you, it was freakish," stated Bonnie as the two girls stood next to a flatbed truck with Elena checking items off by way of clipboard. "Well, she is my ancestor. Oh, and I had the student booth moved into the cafeteria," stated Elena. "Your vampire ancestor, and she didn't just resemble you like a family member would. She was you," said Bonnie, trying to make her point known. "I don't know, I can't explain it. It's creepy, that's all I got," said Elena. "How do you know she's not still out there pretending to be you?" questioned Bonnie. "Apparently Naruto took her somewhere this morning to meet some people, so she won't be around for a couple of days," said Elena, getting a relieved expression from Bonnie. "That bad?" questioned Elena, seeing her expression. "She shrugged off my best shot like it was nothing," said Bonnie with a frown. "What did Prue say when you told her about that?" questioned Elena. At this, Bonnie offered up a weak half smile. Elena was the only person she had told about Prue, mostly because Caroline had been in surgery and then unconscious before she could tell her. "Just that I shouldn't have expected to be able to take down a 500-year-old vampire in the first place. She's supposed to be taking me for some kind of training thing tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes," said the young Bennett, which getting a nod from Elena as they both picked up a bag full of stuffed animal prizes. "Have you talked to Damon since he tried to kill Jeremy yesterday?" questioned Bonnie after a few quiet moments. "No, Bonnie, I haven't, and I won't, and I don't want to talk about Damon or anything else that's vampire related, okay?" said Elena, getting wide eyes from her friend at her tone. "I'm human. And I have to do human stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to go crazy," finished the Gilbert girl. "Okay, I'm sorry, I'll focus. We have to make Caroline proud or she will kill us. I don't know how she does all of this," said Bonnie, thinking about all the work they'd done that morning. "Well, that's because she's not human, obviously," said Elena, with both girls laughing before walking off to drop off their bags of prizes. Meanwhile, at the boarding house, the savageThor brothers had gathered and were all preparing to head back out. Naruto had left earlier in the day and dropped Catherine off in another state, which was fine by both Damon and Stefan, while the two blood brothers had both gone on to handle their own commitments. For Stefan, it was helping out with setting up the carnival and supplying Jeremy with a new vervain bracelet. Damon, meanwhile, had been called to Lockwood Mansion to speak with Carol and had come back with a new suspicion regarding the family, suspecting that they had some deep secret, as they were not vampires but both had been affected by the Gilbert device. "So is this your new obsession?" questioned Stefan. "You'd rather some unknown supernatural element be running rampant upon our town. Fine then, I'll drop it," said Damon, taking a drink from the glass of blood in his hand. "I'm just saying it's not important right now. Catherine came back for a reason, you know that. She's got the world's deadliest vampire chasing her, and she comes back here after doing all that to fake her death. We need to find out what she was up to before it bites us in the ass." said Stefan, getting a snort from Damon. We already know. She came back to profess her undying eternal love for you, so I'm gonna let you deal with her because I have more important things to do, like explode. Cheers, said Damon, raising his glass in his direction and walking out of the room. I just know he's going to do something stupid, said Stefan with a sigh. What's wrong? Worried he's right? Questioned Naruto. He probably is, but once again, do the Lockwoods even matter? We have more pressing issues, said Stefan. No, we don't, not yet. I know why she came and I approve. I've even tweaked her plan to help us out more. Keep an eye on Damon for now. Rejections from both Catherine and Elena on the same night left him reeling, and you can tell by how on edge he is, said Naruto. His inferiority complex, said Stefan, realizing what was at the root of the problem. Exactly. That bastard Giuseppe did a real number on him. Fine, I've got Damon. Hopefully I can keep him from starting another problem, said Stefan after a few moments. At the hospital, Caroline had just stepped out of the bathroom, now clad in a pair of black jeans and a purple top. As she walked out of the bathroom, she found Matt waiting on her with her bag in his hand. Did you tell anyone you were picking me up? Questioned Caroline as she emerged. Just your mom, said the teen, getting a smile from the girl. Good, I want it to be a surprise when they see me, revealed the girl. After her impromptu feeding on the nurse earlier in the morning, she had managed to apply a bandage to her neck and get her to go along with the story that her husband had gotten a bit kinky. Other than that, she had gotten her to convince the doctor to release her today instead of waiting for the next day like they were initially going to. Still smiling, she grabbed hold of his hand and led him out of the room, with him carrying the bag carrying her things from the accident. After she signed out, Matt led her outside where a dark blue 2001 Mitsubishi Eclipse Spider GTS was parked. The car had taken him a lot of work over the last few months, but he had finally finished it. He had swapped out the stock body kit in exchange for the Shine Street-wide body kit with a rear wing. Of course, the GTS package hadn't come out until 2003, but it had been an easy swap since he was basically rebuilding the car anyway. Of course, while he was doing that, he had also taken out a lot of the restrictions that had come with it. At the same time, he'd added a camera in the rear that came on when he hit reverse, and as such had gotten a radio that had a screen as well. The final touch had been the installation of the Bose audio system. As he started the car up, he hit a button causing the hood to come down, getting a smile from Caroline as they drove off. Meanwhile, at the Lockwood mansion, Tyler was just about ready to head out as well. He and Mason had gone out on a 7-mile run earlier in the day that had left him honestly exhausted. This was a surprising feat, as he played varsity in football, basketball and baseball, works out 4 times a week and run 3. Mason had actually laughed at him as they had come in, joking that Grandma Lockwood had actually passed him on the last one, in her walker. Still, he had enjoyed the time out with his uncle, during which time the man had tried to help him understand and get to the root of his anger issues. While he hadn't been able to figure it out, he had at least been pointed in the right direction, so he would begin to look for patterns. Now, after a relaxing shower and a well-earned rest, he was ready to head out to the carnival. As he wandered the halls, he came upon the sight of his uncle rummaging around in his father's office desk. What are you doing, huh? Questioned Tyler, getting Mason to look up at him. Nothing. Just killing time while waiting for you, said the man. You looking for something? Questioned Tyler, walking further in. Yeah, actually. You know where I can find any family artifact stuff? Heirlooms? Asked Mason, getting his nephew to snort out a laugh. You blow through your trust fund already? Joked Tyler. I did that when I was 22. Retorted Mason, playing along with the joke. Nah, seriously, I'm just looking for this old piece of my mom's. My dad gave it to her when they got married. It's a sentimental value. Probably passed down to your dad. Could still be in the house here somewhere, revealed Mason, getting Tyler to look up at him from his position at the desk. What's it look like? Questioned the teen. It's a moonstone, about the size of a hockey puck. Old, ugly, minimal monetary value, said Mason, giving his best description of the item. Hey man, whatever. Ask my mom, I guess, said Tyler, having no clue what he was talking about. Yeah, Cool, I'll do that. You're ready? Yeah, said the younger Lockwood before both men left the room and the house. Hours later find that nearly the entire town had shown up for the carnival, proving it to have been a massive success. Elena and Bonnie had been working hard nearly the whole day, making sure the booths were kept stocked with food and prizes or anything else they needed. Both had been surprised and happy to see Caroline, and though she'd wanted to help, had convinced her to just have fun today. Stefan meanwhile had stuck with Damon for the majority of the day and unfortunately had been forced to agree with Damon that there was something off about the Lockwoods. Even operating as he was at nowhere near his full strength, Mason had been able to beat him in an arm wrestling contest, which would have been impossible for a regular human. Damon had since compelled a human to start a fight with Tyler just to see what happens. From there they had split up, with Damon going one way and Stefan going another. As he walked through the empty halls of the school from the restroom, Damon was surprised to see Caroline also in the hall. "Hey Blondie, they let you out," said Damon with a small smirk before turning to walk away. "I remember," said the girl, causing him to stop and turn back. "Remember what exactly?" questioned the vampire. "I remember how you manipulated me. You pushed me around, abused me, erased my memories, fed on me," said the girl, walking slowly towards him the whole time. "You're crazy," said Damon before turning away. "The memories have been coming back all day, in pieces," said Caroline, causing Damon to stop and turn back towards her. "You can't remember. It's impossible. I mean, unless you were becoming a," started Damon before trailing off in realization as he reached her. "I have a message from Catherine," said Caroline, stepping forward so that she was right in his face and looking him in the eyes. She said, "Game on," said the girl before turning to walk away, only for Damon to grab her arm to stop her. "Wait." Whatever else Damon was going to say was stopped as at the contact Caroline turned and pushed him back with such force he was lifted off his feet and thrown down the hall before landing on his back, only to slide for nearly 3 feet. "You suck," said the girl before turning to walk away. Not long later found Elena, Bonnie, Stefan, Naruto and Damon within an empty classroom as Damon explained his confrontation with Caroline to his now captive audience and his new suspicion. "How did this happen?" questioned Stefan, his hand coming up to massage his forehead. "Well, I fed her blood and Catherine obviously killed her, and A+B=." "But why?" questioned Elena. "Because Catherine is a manipulative, nasty little slut," said Damon. "And she said, 'Game on.'" "I mean, what does that even mean?" questioned Bonnie. "It means she's playing dirty and wants us to know," said Damon. "But why Caroline?" questioned Elena. "It basically says no one is safe. Anyone we know is fair game," said Stefan, frowning. "Caroline must be completely out of her mind. She doesn't even know what's happening to her," said Bonnie. "Oh, I think she does. All of my compulsion from the past started wearing off the minute she was in transition," said Damon. "We have to find her," said Stefan. "Yup, and kill her," said Damon. "You are not killing Caroline," said Elena. "She knows who we are. She's officially a liability, and we've got to get rid of her," said Damon. "No, Damon, absolutely not," said Bonnie, now glaring at him. "Need I remind you of the full situation? Firstly, Caroline of all people will not make it as a vampire. Her mother is a vampire hunter. Guys, come on, we all know how this story's gonna end. Just flip to the last chapter and," started Damon, only to be cut off. "It's not an option, Damon," said Elena. "What about you two?" "The silence is deafening," said Damon, turning to his brothers. "We're not going to kill her," said Stefan after a few minutes. "You have any other brilliant ideas then?" questioned Damon. "We teach her how to control herself," said Stefan. "Who's going to do that, Stefan? She doesn't trust me, and you can't even feed correctly without flipping out," said Damon, causing both Bonnie and Elena to share looks of confusion. "Enough," called Naruto, catching the room's attention. "Firstly, Caroline isn't a vampire," said Naruto calmly. "Of course she is. I fed her the blood myself. Her strength is a dead giveaway, as is the compulsion wearing off," said Damon. "No, she isn't. Bonnie told me that you planned on feeding her your blood." Then Bonnie had her confrontation with Catherine yesterday. Where's she thinking Catherine was? Elena revealed you had healed her. Knowing what her plan entails, I had already anticipated she would make the exact move that she did. By that point I had already been in to see Caroline, and my blood is much more powerful than yours, said Naruto, causing all of them to look on him with wide eyes. So she's a kitsune? Questioned Bonnie. Yes, it fit her much better than vampire ever would anyway, said Naruto. So what do we do? Questioned Elena. Tonight we enjoy the carnival. Tomorrow Stefan will start teaching Caroline the basics, said Naruto. Basics? Questioned Elena. How to tap into and control her newly enhanced strength, agility, senses, and how to use compulsion. Hers are almost likely much more powerful than ours, but the basics are the same, explained Stefan. Wait, so kitsunes can use compulsion too? Questioned Bonnie, having not known this. Well, we have a range of powers and ability, but we can pretty much do anything magic-based, and compulsion is classified as mind magic and considered basic, revealed Naruto. If that's basic, what's advanced? Questioned Elena. Telepathy, telekinesis, and mental defense are just a few among an entire list of abilities, said Naruto, paying no heed to the stunned looks Elena and Bonnie gave him. Anyway, back on point. There's no need to worry about Caroline for now, and as far as Katarina is concerned, I'll handle that. Now go have fun, said Naruto, causing Damon, Stefan, and Elena to leave the room. What's wrong? Questioned Bonnie once the others had left. Just a headache. My clones have been busy today, said Naruto. Sounds like stress. Maybe you just need to relax a bit, said Bonnie, which sounded good to his ears. Before he could do more than contemplate that, however, Bonnie had taken matters into her own hands, which he felt as almost casually she went about unzipping his pants before she reached inside to pull out his cock. Kissing him quickly, she gave him a sexy smile as she descended down to her knees, stroking him all the while. A moment later she had taken him into her mouth, and Naruto soon found all of his troubled thoughts drifting away. Turning his attention away from her momentarily, he flicked his left index finger outward, causing the door to lock. While using his right and channeling his chakra, he tapped the desk, causing a line of black script to flow from his finger over the desk, along the floor, into the walls and ceiling in each direction. As he turned his attention back to Bonnie, and the two got lost in each other, when asked in the future, both would say that the carnival had turned out great. Chapter 10. As the moon hung in its apex in the sky, a large mansion could be seen behind a large stone gate that went all the way around the property. The property itself was located in Paris, France, and took up nearly an entire block of real estate on its own. Within the mansion, however, a gathering was currently taking place within a large room, its doors having just been sealed to begin a meeting. From his position at the table, Marcus Corvinus took stock of all of those who had answered his call for a meeting. To his immediate right sat what many would assume to be an older man by the name of Thomas. His description in this manner would be apt, given his hair whitened by age and the wrinkles that has started forming on his face. As the host of this meeting, he had afforded Thomas the seat to his right, something that as a regent he would never have ordinarily been given. However, given the fact he was a former council member, his status was not as low as a regular regent, and he held considerable power. At the seat next to Thomas sat a man named Vidar. While not appearing as old as Thomas, he would no doubt easily be viewed as a man in his mid to late 50s. Vidar, however, had a clean-shaven bald head that made him wonder how he could stand the cold of the north. Vidar, like the man beside him, was also a regent, his station being the Northern Coven located in Scandinavia. The next person was Cassius, the regent of the Eastern Coven and one of the original death dealers. Like Vidar, he had a bald head, however his ears were a bit larger and ended in a point at the top, much like what one would think an elf's would. Next to him sat Istvan, another vampire who took on an older appearance. With his white hair and the few wrinkles along his face, he would pass for a man in his 60s. Finally, there was Amelia, who ended the line, taking the seat directly to his left, completing the circle. This group of individuals were, among other things, all that remained of the first generation of Corvinus vampires. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and to our host who has opened the doors of the Western Coven for this meeting, stated Marcus, bringing the attention of the room to himself. I must admit Lord Marcus to be glad this meeting was called. With the rumors that have been floating around lately, I am pleased to see they were just that. Stated Istvan. The rumors are indeed one of the reasons this meeting was called. Stated Amelia, bringing the attention of the room to herself. Before I could begin my planned trip to awaken Marcus, I was intercepted by agents of his father. They'd learned of a plot against the lives of Marcus and I. In preparation of this, a double was put in place. This double was called a blood clone and was an exact replica of me. While the double took the trip, I was evacuated to a safe house in New York. The trip went as planned, at least until the train arrived in Budapest, where it was attacked by lichens while the guards that had been assigned stood by and watched. The entire council along with the double were killed, mauled by the lichens. During this time, Victor was awoken by his adopted daughter Celine, who felt that a threat by a large lichen den was being ignored. She discovered that not only was Lucian still very much alive, but that the lichens were actively working to create hybrids, which she proved by capturing a lichen scientist and bringing him before Victor. Spoke Marcus, causing several of them to narrow their eyes. Victor of course killed the lichen and ran off to do battle with the den. It was the lichen's blood that awakened me. Through that blood I learned not only all of this, but that Craven, the regent of the coven, had covered all of this up and had been actively working with the lichens for centuries. I was naturally displeased, thus the destruction of Ordog has. Stated Marcus. Well, at least most of our people made it out. Stated Thomas with a sigh. The only deaths were those that I knew were traitors. Stated Marcus, getting nods around the room. Still, by the end of the night a hybrid had been created and both Lucian and Victor were dead. Said Marcus. They killed each other? Questioned Istvan in surprise. No, Lucian was killed in a cowardly act by Craven, who betrayed him upon learning of Victor's arrival. Victor was killed by Celine after learning it was not lichens but Victor himself that had broken into her home and massacred her family. Said Amelia. What of the hybrid? Questioned Thomas. A distant relative of mine by the name of Michael Corvin, who Celine had apparently been seeing for some time before he was kidnapped by the lichens. After learning that her bite could possibly cure her at the time dying lover, she purposely bit him to turn him into a hybrid. Stated Amelia. I've heard stories about that girl. Word was she lived only to kill lichens. Stated Thomas. She was motivated by vengeance. Can't say I blame her. I joined the death dealers for pretty much the same reasons. Stated Cassius. I take it then the rumors of your father's demise were also exaggerated. Stated Vidar. Alexander Corvinus is dead. However, my father is not. As it turns out, the man known as Alexander Corvinus was a clone doubled for my actual father. My father's true name is Naruto Uzumaki, and he is still very much alive and much older than 1600 years. Stated Marcus. Naruto's power is humbling. In fact, he has also gone by both Poseidon and Thor over the thousands of years he's walked the earth. Stated Amelia. Uzumaki Naruto is one of the 9 lords. One of the survivors from the second race of man and now a god in his own right. Stated Vidar. You know him? Questioned Cassius. I know of one of his sisters. Yugito Ni is the goddess of death. My daughter Lena has spoken with her a few times in the sacred world. Explained Vidar. Speaking of my father, he learned that there were multiple races of vampires. One race were literal demons, soulless abominations masquerading in human bodies. The other breed were created by magic, humans whose spirits have risen up to possess their bodies. My father had grown quite close to the original family of this line of vampires and as a result spent much time trying to figure out a way to combine their line with ours. He found one. Over the last bit of time, Amelia and I have been meeting with this family and we have come upon an agreement to combine the lines in a way that would strengthen both. At these words the room went silent and Marcus knew he had the attention of everyone more now than he had previously. You stupid boy. The angered roar was filled with such anger and power that it forced everyone within the room to the floor. As the owner of the voice settled down from his explosion of anger, those watching him could feel the hairs on their arms stand on end as goosebumps rose on their flesh. Once again the living room of the savageThor boarding house was playing host to a meeting. Damon, the cause of the angered exclamation, slowly picked himself up off the floor, having been thrown clear across the room due to the outburst. Also in attendance were Matt, Alaric, Stefan, Caroline and Elena, all of whom had been affected by the brief surge of power each in their own way, though Elena and Caroline were struck by arousal. What's the big deal? There was a threat, I ended it, problem solved. Said Damon, wincing as his back throbbed. I said you could investigate Lockwood. Investigate? You think I didn't know he was a fucking werewolf? I could smell it on him the moment we met. All I wanted was you to use that mass of gray matter between your ears and discover the truth for yourself, that's all. Said Naruto, finishing with a snarl before taking a seat in order to rein himself in. That's what we did. Not my fault he proved he to be a threat. Said Damon, causing the blonde to scoff. Who are you trying to fool? I'm telepathic, remember, and even if I wasn't, don't think I don't have other ways to tell when someone is lying. Said Naruto. Sitting back, the blonde being to massage the bridge of his nose as the beginning of a headache hit him. He'd spent the past 2 weeks away with other business, leaving the day after the carnival. During that time he had dropped Prue off over at Gara's, where they had used one of his portal chambers to allow Prue to enter the reality that now contained the new Nexus world. Of course he had first had to explain to Bonnie about why her teacher would be unavailable, as she was literally now in another dimension. He had joined Prue just long enough for her to get settled and to handle a few errands before returning through the portal. Following that, he'd gone to the New York facility where Catherine had been staying and where he had introduced the vampire to their daughter, who he had named Nadia, a meeting that both of them had been highly anticipating. Of course, once he'd gotten there, he had taken the time to catch up with his daughter and Catherine. As such, he was only just returning to Mystic Falls and had called the meeting upon his return. During his time away, however, that group had been busy. The day following the carnival, and under his direction, Stefan had taken Caroline in hand and begun teaching her the basics, including how to tap into her newfound strength, speed and senses. Damon, Elena and Alaric meanwhile had gone off to Duke University, where Alaric's now ex-wife Isabel had once taught, in order to look through her research, where they had learned about the curse of the sun and the moon, which according to the legend was what made it so that vampires could not walk in the sun and werewolves were forced to turn in the presence of the full moon. They had apparently also learned that the bite of a werewolf would be fatal to a vampire. Stefan and Caroline ended up having a confrontation with an actual werewolf that same night. While they had managed to get away, it had been a close call. The next weekend, Damon, now more than a bit suspicious that Mason Lockwood was a werewolf, had manipulated events so that Jenna would throw a barbecue, during which time he not only proved his theory but surprise made an enemy of Lockwood by stabbing him with a silver knife, only for it not to work. The next day, Mason had made his move, outing Damon and Stefan as vampires to the sheriff before setting them up to be killed. Luckily, Elena and Caroline had been able to save them, but it had blown Caroline's cover and caused them to lock up her mother. Following this, the group had apparently decided to strike back at Mason, roping Bonnie into the action. With her help, they had not only knocked out Mason but discovered the location of the moonstone, which had been at the bottom of a well. Stefan, being one of the first to arrive there, had gone into the well to retrieve the stone, only to realize too late that it was also filled with vervain flowers. Eventually, Elena had been forced to go into the well to secure Stefan and the moonstone, allowing Caroline to pull them both out. Damon meanwhile had spent the day torturing Mason and ended it by ripping his heart out. Did you know he was telepathic? Questioned Alaric softly to Elena. Found out the day before he left. He doesn't use it much though. Said Elena. Tell me, can anyone guess why I would leave a werewolf in a town with my 2 vampire brothers while I was away? Questioned Naruto. He was needed for something. Stated Alaric with a frown. Exactly. The only thing we didn't have was the moonstone. Now we have the moonstone and no werewolf, which means I now have to bring Catherine back earlier than expected and we'll have to improvise. Said Naruto. So we get a new werewolf, big deal. Said Damon, rolling his eyes. Naruto sighed and wondered, not for the first time, why Damon never bothered to use his brain. Shaking his head and not wanting to deal with Damon anymore at the moment, he surprised everyone when his form disappeared in golden orbs. Now what did I say? Questioned Damon in frustration. Don't you remember, Damon? Vanessa told us that the werewolves have been hunted nearly to extinction by this point. stated Elena, rolling her eyes before she stood to leave, followed quickly by the others, leaving Damon alone. Nearly 2 weeks later found Catherine standing within the bedroom of a rather nice house. Along with her was a young woman with milk chocolate skin and long brown hair who stood only a few inches taller than the vampire. "So what do you think?" questioned the young woman as she looked herself over in the mirror in her black dress. "I think someone is planning to get lucky tonight," said Catherine, giving her a once-over before turning back to her own image. "Well, it would be a nice way to cap off the night." "Still, are you sure this is a good idea?" retorted the young woman. "Lucy, relax, everything will be fine. Tonight has been planned out to the most minute detail," said Catherine. "Fine, you want to tell me what's with the hair?" questioned Lucy as Catherine had her hair straightened instead of in its signature curl. "I'm impersonating my dull-as dishwater doppelganger Elena. She has the worst taste," said Catherine. "Except in men. Isn't it a risk pretending to be her in front of the entire town? I've gotten quite good at it actually, and everyone's gonna be in masks. It's for some feed this something charity. It's for a good cause, Lucy." Okay. Well, have you actually seen the Moonstone before? I always thought it was some made-up legend," said Lucy. "I've held it in my hand. Unfortunately, I had to trade it to George Lockwood 150 years ago for me freedom," said Catherine with a frown. "And he never used it?" questioned Lucy in surprise. "He probably tried, but as you know, you need a witch to break the curse, and it wouldn't have done what he wanted anyway," said Catherine. "So I take it you want me to break the curse?" stated Lucy. "No. I just need your help securing the stone. Once that's done, I don't want you anywhere near the shitstorm that's bound to follow," said Catherine. Meanwhile, at the savageThor house, Stefan and Bonnie could be seen walking through the halls of the first floor. Bonnie had arrived not long ago to be greeted by Caroline, Damon, Jeremy, Stefan and Alaric, all of whom were apparently working on a plan to kill Catherine. "I know you love Elena and you want to be with her, but it's risky. Too many people could get hurt," said Bonnie, trying appeal to his common sense. "Look, I want Elena back, yes, but it's more than that. What Catherine did to Jenna, it crossed the line. She has to be stopped before it happens again." These were words Bonnie couldn't really fight. Jenna had just gotten back from the hospital where she'd had surgery and been kept on watch due to a deep stab wound. Apparently, before they had all met up to brief Naruto on his return, Damon had called Catherine and left her a voicemail informing her of how he had killed Mason Lockwood. She must have gotten it late, however she had struck back swiftly and Jenna had paid the price, as it was revealed she had been compelled to follow Catherine's orders, who had promptly ordered her to stab herself. After that, Elena had quite simply put her relationship with Stefan on hold until such time that she felt her family was safe from the craziness. "I don't know, Stefan," said Bonnie after a few moments. The truth was, she was a bit torn. She loved Jenna as if she were family, however she knew she and Catherine would have to learn to live with each other. It had gotten to the point where she did see a life for herself with Naruto, and as Catherine was the mother of one of his children, there were issues there. However, on the other hand, if she played a part in killing the vampire, she felt as if it could seriously hurt her relationship. "Catherine knows me, right? She knows that I'm not gonna try something in a crowd full of innocent people, so that gives me an edge. I could catch her by surprise," said the vampire. "I could do a spell to trap her, like the tomb spell, but that's it. I'll have no part in killing her, and as far as I'm concerned, you told me you planned to desiccate her," said Bonnie after a moment of thought. "Right. We can isolate her, away from the others." "Thank you, Bonnie," said Stefan. "Don't ask me to do anything like this again, and if this blows back in any way," said Bonnie, "I've got it, I'll make sure the others know, and I'll explain things to Naruto," said Stefan. Elsewhere, Naruto could be found covered in a fine layer of sweat as he beheld his latest acquisition. In his hands he held a sword that, for those who studied its type, would know was a Xiphos. The double-bladed sword was 3 feet in length from tip to base and looked to be dull silver in color. Near the base on both sides of the blade was the marking of a trident on a brown background just over the two-pronged guard. The hilt of the sword was wrapped in brown leather and the cap and guard were both gold in color. Eyeing it carefully, he finally nodded satisfied and pressed his hand to the cap, pushing it in for only a second before releasing it. As he released it, he watched as the sword quickly transformed until in its place was a rather stylish-looking ballpoint pen that was sea blue in color. It had taken some time for it to be ready, however, as it was one of 2 projects that the Fates had advised him to have made while he was visiting the new Nexus world Gaara had created. He felt that the time had been well worth it. "You've outdone yourself, Ten-chan," said Naruto, smiling as he tucked the pen into his left pants pocket. "Hey, it was a fun project, glad I could help." The speaker was a woman who had long black hair that was pulled into a braided ponytail that ended at her waistline. She wore a pair of brown pants and a black tank top over which was a black apron that he figured was covered in markings. Her name was Tenten and she was a very old friend of his, one of his best, along with being the goddess of fire, craftsmen and smiths. This meant that she was unequivocally the greatest forger in existence. "So when are you heading back over there?" questioned Tenten, tossing him a rag which he gratefully accepted so he could wipe the sweat from his face. "Well, I still have some things that I want to take care of here. Maybe in a few years, though, once Matt is a bit older and doesn't need me to hang around," said the blonde. "I take it you plan to send a clone over in the meantime then?" said Tenten, causing him to laugh. "Have I become that predictable?" questioned the blonde. "In this instance, yeah. As powerful as you are and as new as this world is, it would need to be prepared for your level of power just so you don't break it by accident. Perhaps, however, Kurama will be there. My parents and Himawari will all be there as well," said Naruto. "Blood clones?" questioned Tenten. "Of course, you know they wouldn't actually leave the kits. Well, Hima is going herself, but she knows she can come and go whenever she likes." "Okay, who else is going?" questioned Tenten, getting more intrigued the more they spoke about it. Meanwhile, back in Mystic Falls within the Gilbert house, Elena was walking Matt to the door as he had come to drop some things off for her. "You're welcome to hang out. Alaric's coming over. It's gonna be pizza and bad TV," said the girl as they neared the door. "I'd love to, but I'm going to the masquerade party at the Lockwoods, aren't you?" retorted the quarterback. No. Not with what's going on with me and Stefan, plus with Jenna in this shape, it's just not a good time. Honestly, I'd rather miss it too, but this one's mandatory." "Why?" questioned Elena. "Well, keep this to yourself for a bit," started Matt, getting a nod from Elena. "Pops finally remembered which one of his clones sired me and Vic. Turns out my mom got it wrong. It wasn't his Arashi persona but one called Peter Maxwell. Turns out the Maxwell family was one of Virginia's founding colonists and he just happened to remember this. He delivered some things to the council and the Maxwells are going to be revealed as one of the founding families," explained Matt. "I'm happy for you. I know how much you always wanted to know your family history," said Elena, pulling the teen into a hug. "I think I may have got more than I bargained for with my family," said Matt. "Maybe, but we both know you're happier now." In another part of town, Elizabeth Forbes could be found sitting in her home office with an opened bottle of bourbon and a half-empty glass in front of her. With what she had learned today, she had needed the drink. What had started as a fairly standard day had been completely derailed and shifted on its axis by a visit from Naruto savageThor, or Naruto Uzumaki as she now knew him to be. He had come and unlocked her memories of a few weeks previous where she had witnessed Caroline knock 2 of her deputies unconscious effortlessly. She could now remember a conversation where Caroline had corrected her when she had accused her of becoming a vampire and told her she had become something else but she couldn't explain how. Naruto had revealed that while she had been in the hospital, a vampire had killed her in an attempt to provoke the Salvatore brothers. However, Naruto had previously been in to see her and slipped her some of his own blood, which had transformed her into a kitsune once she had been killed. He had known that Damon had gotten his hands on some vampire blood and snuck it into Caroline's system, knowing the girl would be protected by the deputies on watch outside of her room. Naruto, however, had done his deed due to his relationship with her, explaining how over the millennia that he had lived he'd had clones go out and live complete human lives, one of which was Arashi Uzumaki and another being Peter Maxwell. He explained that he usually only got the memories when the clones died, but he could if needed receive them by opening up a connection, which he explained expended a lot of energy. Regardless, because of his memories from the Arashi clone and the newfound feelings they caused within him, he had slipped Caroline his blood. He had also explained that at Caroline's request he had locked away her full kitsune form until she had lived out her natural human lifetime so that any children she had would be human. However, he had also explained that just because they would be human did not mean they wouldn't still be special, as it was extremely likely that her children would become witches, and powerful ones at that. After a few more details, he had surprised her by his form collapsing into golden orbs of light, which had then lifted upwards and out of the house. It had prompted her to take the rest of the day off, allowing her to come home for the needed drink and to do some research on kitsunes. Her research had revealed that kitsunes are from Japanese folklore and are Japanese foxes, and that a kitsune can have up to 9 tails, depending on its age, wisdom and power. However, that was all part of what was commonly known as mythology. She had also, now knowing that Arashi's book was in fact an autobiography, bought each one and had become engrossed in the story of the young Naruto in order to learn more about the man she had thought she knew. Meanwhile, at the Lockwood mansion, the masquerade ball was in full swing, and though it was still within the second hour, it was a packed house. Catherine had arrived with Lucy nearly 30 minutes in and has since been making the rounds. With her mask on, she had been able to remain anonymous while taking in her surroundings and memorizing the house's layout. It was while she was doing this that she came across Tyler and Carol Lockwood within the former mayor's study and was pleased with the mood of the hosts. She had long since made her own move as well, and now was merely waiting for the other pieces on the board to make their own. Outside of the Lockwood house, 2 of the savageThor brothers, Damon and Stefan, could be seen on the back porch overlooking the grounds and those who had come to partake in the night's festivities. "You see her?" questioned Damon with a frown. "No, you sure you can do this?" answered Stefan before asking a question of his own. "Who are talking to?" responded Damon, causing Stefan to shake his head. "Look, I had the chance to kill her before and I hesitated," stated the younger brother. "Well, little brother, that is the fork in the road between you and me. I don't hesitate. Perhaps, but you did spend 145 years loving her, so it could happen," said Stefan. "I don't hesitate," reiterated the elder, getting Stefan to drop the conversation. Back inside, Caroline and Bonnie were also making their rounds along with Matt and Naruto respectively. Matt had wanted to go and spend some time with Tyler, however, other than greeting his friend, he had remained within sight of the guests at his father's direction. Caroline and Bonnie were like Matt, wondering why Naruto had them staying so prominently, until after a time he motioned them to look to where Carol Lockwood stood, calling the room's attention by clinking her glass of champagne softly with a spoon. Seeing she had the room's attention, she smiled and placed the spoon down upon the banister. "Thank you all for joining with us this evening," stated Carol. "I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your support of my family in this time when we have needed it. This ball was Richard's idea, and I thank all of you for this last act of support to my husband," said the woman, stopping as many raised their glasses in honor of the late mayor, something that caused her to smile and raise her own glass before lowering it, allowing others to do so. "Now then, I would also like to take this opportunity to announce that a major find was discovered by our historical society. This find is a diary which they have unearthed and after extensive testing have discovered dates back to the year 1790, which is 70 years before what we thought of was the founding. The diary, from what I learned, belonged to a woman named Beatrice Bennett, whose family came here in 1690 to escape the witch trials of Salem and were joined by a family known as the Maxwells, who were metalsmiths, the same smiths who created the founder's bell, or as I now know it to be named the Maxwell Bell. Further research by our historical society recovered a journal written by Benjamin Lockwood, the first mayor of our town. This journal also recognizes the Bennett and Maxwell families as the town's original settlers. However, the entry goes on to state that due to the injustices of the times, the Bennetts were not allowed to sign the original charter by the governor of Virginia. This was for 2 reasons: first, because the Bennetts were, in his words, colored, and second, that the family was headed by women. The woman paused here to allow everyone to take this all in, making particular note of the group she had been eyeing the entire time and seeing the young ladies of the group holding hands. Seeing that she had the audience hanging on her words, decided it was time to continue. The head of the Maxwell family, however, decided not to sign the charter. His reasoning was that as the two families had grown alongside each other since the late 1600s, his family would not sign until the Bennets could also do so. While it was always intended for them to do so, Benjamin Lockwood died before this could happen, and his journals were packed away before the next mayor could learn of the issue. Because of these discoveries, I would like to announce that the council is officially and retroactively recognizing both the Bennet and Maxwell families as founding families. Well, it's about time, said Naruto, emerging from a darkened corner as Elena approached the Lockwood mansion. You were expecting me? Questioned Elena in surprise. You're predictable and too nosy for your own good, said the blonde, causing her to scowl. What's going on? Questioned Elena. My idiot brothers are by now most likely walking into Catherine's trap. Trap? Questioned the Gilbert girl. Catherine's been on the run for over 5 centuries. That means she's had to be a step or two ahead of those chasing her the entire time. Do you really think that someone with that kind of mind power wouldn't know exactly what the reaction would be for what happened to Jenna? Retorted the blonde, causing her eyes to widen before she ran inside. Chuckling at the sight, the blonde shook his head. Really, everyone here was just too easy. No emotional control at all. With that, the blonde, seeing no one else around, burst into a cloud of smoke as the clone dispelled itself. Inside the mansion, in a room on the upper level, Catherine could be seen sitting casually on the edge of a desk with a smirk on her face. She had wandered off during the Lockwood widow's speech and had run into the young Gilbert heir Jeremy, and while she found him quite yummy in a boyish sort of way, felt he had clearly inherited the Gilbert arrogance. Following that, it had been a quick trip to Caroline, who she had spying on the group, to learn that Bonnie had the moonstone. When the girl led her into the room she currently occupied, however, she had discovered she couldn't leave, meaning it had obviously been spelled shut. It had been that moment that Stefan and Damon had revealed themselves, each of them armed with stakes. While initially caught off guard by the dual attack, the two launched, their lack of any actual combat training quickly made itself known. As such, not only was she faster and stronger than them on account of her age, but she was just better than them, as was proven by the two of them lying prone on the ground and groaning in pain. You know, you two really are disappointments. In fact, I can't believe I even spread my legs for you two. One can't control his impulsiveness or his inferiority complex, and another who can't control his bloodlust. Honestly, being Naruto's so-called brothers, I expected more from you two. Hell, I even erred on the side of caution and had myself mystically tied to Elena so that she would feel whatever pain I felt. So here's the deal, as far as I'm concerned, you two owe me, not just for the gift of immortality, but for revealing to the world at large that I was still alive. Now where is my moonstone? Meanwhile, on a lower floor of the mansion, Tyler had begun to enjoy himself. With liquor flowing and the company of a friend and a female dancing around in her underwear, he was currently in his element. The mentioned friend was one of his football teammates by the name of Jeff Stevens, and the girl was Sarah Barnes. Jeremy Gilbert had been there earlier, however he had been pulled away by his phone. There had been another girl as well by the name of Amy Bradley, however she'd been missing for a while. Where's Amy anyway? Questioned Sarah. I don't know, she disappeared, said Jeff. She's probably drunk somewhere, said Tyler, as he was pretty well on his way there himself. Like me, said Jeff before taking the bottle and pouring some on the floor. What the fuck, man? Exclaimed Tyler, getting the other teen to stop. What man? It's a party, said Jeff, picking up a picture of the Lockwood parents from off of a shelf. Right, Dad. You know, looks like your dad wants a drink, continued the inebriated teen before pouring the liquor onto the picture. Hey, that's not cool. What's wrong with you? Said Tyler, moving to snatch the picture away, only for Jeff to move it out of his reach. Come on, Ty, the guy was a dick, said Jeff. Come on, you're being mean. His dad's dead, said Sarah. Doesn't make it any less true. Remember how your dad used to slap you around, said Jeff before slapping Tyler. Bringing his hand up to his face for a moment, the Lockwood heir directed a glare at Jeff that was so vicious it gave both teens pause. Because you're drunk, I'm going to do your ass a favor and pretend that didn't happen. Now put the goddamn picture down, spoke Tyler, speaking slowly. All right, man, chill. I'm just having fun, said Jeff, moving over to the desk only to drive the picture into the edge, breaking it. Okay, You need to calm your drunk ass down right now, said Tyler. Do something about it, said Jeff, pushing the other teen back. That's what you don't want, said Tyler, using every ounce of self-control he possessed to not knock the other teen on his ass. Before his uncle Mason had disappeared, he had discovered the man's secret of being a werewolf. It had taken some time, but eventually he'd gotten the man to tell him what had triggered the curse, which was the act of killing another person. He had made a point to inform him it wasn't the act of murder, for even something accidental that resulted in the death of another could trigger the curse. Mason had told him that learning to channel and control his aggression would go a long way to avoiding the curse affecting him. Unfortunately, while he was trying to control himself, Jeff took the opportunity to rush him, tackling the Lockwood heir to the floor before throwing a punch at his face. Meanwhile, Bonnie was moving through the house at a fast-paced walk, her senses opened wide as she tried to track her target. She and Jeremy had been making small talk, each of them about ready to leave, when they had been approached by Elena. Both of them had been surprised to see her there, though in hindsight she supposed it shouldn't have been much of one. Regardless of this, Elena had not been pleased to learn that they were trying to kill Catherine, and in a crowded mansion no less. Of course, she then had to point out that this wasn't being done for Elena, but because Catherine had crossed the line going after Jenna. Before they could speak further, however, Elena had cried out in pain as a wound opened up on her hand. She had rather quickly realized that Elena had been mystically linked with Catherine, so that any wound the vampire suffered Elena would feel. Thankfully, Prue had taught her quite a bit in the time they had spent in time compression before she left, which had amounted to a year of time. As such, she had been able to find the link, however she had been unable to cut it. As such, she left Elena with Jeremy while she traced the magical signature to an empty dining room. Lucy, called Bonnie upon spotting the witch. Hello, Bonnie, said Lucy calmly. I need you to release the spell you put on my friend, stated Bonnie. Sure, if you give me the moonstone, said Lucy, causing Bonnie to frown. Seriously, why are you helping Catherine? Don't you know what she is? Questioned the teen. Don't get high and mighty, you're the one sharing cock with her after all, said Lucy. No, I'm not, said the teen quickly. Perhaps not yet, but she gave me the story. I know all about her history with Naruto. I also know that Catherine is interested in climbing back into bed with him, so it won't be long, said Lucy. Back within the sealed room, the small pause had come to the hostilities as the two brothers warily eyed the elder, more powerful vampire. She had spent the last several minutes berating the two of them while casually throwing them around the room. Why haven't you killed us yet? Questioned Stefan after as the lull in their activities dragged on. Whoever said I wanted you dead? This is punishment for antagonizing me, plain and simple, said the elder vampire. You crossed the line with Jenna. What did you think there would be no response? Said Stefan, causing her to roll her eyes. Jenna was a warning shot. Next time you piss me off, I'll make her kill your precious Elena, then little Jeremy, and then herself, said Catherine, causing both of them to freeze just as Lucy appeared in the doorway with the moonstone in hand. Catherine, the spell on this room was lifted. You're free to leave, said the witch. Thank God, said the vampire, already well past bored. When I hand this over, my debt to you is over, said the witch. Done, said Catherine. I owe you nothing, said Lucy, causing Catherine to roll her eyes and agree. With that acknowledgement, Lucy tossed her the stone, which the vampire caught easily. She held it in her hand for but a few moments before she collapsed to the ground, struggling to draw breath. You should have told me another witch was involved. She's a Bennett witch, Catherine, but I'm sure you knew that, said Lucy. Wait, Elena, exclaimed Stefan, only to be cut off. She's fine. I lifted the spell on her, said Lucy before apologizing for her involvement and leaving the room. Once she was gone, the door closed as if on its own before Naruto emerged from the wall with some type of large cloth held in his hands. You know, you two were lucky, said the blonde, moving over and picking up the unconscious vampire. We weren't going for a drawn-out fight, said Stefan. Sure fooled me with your theatrical appearance. If you were going for a surprise takedown, you should have just struck instead of just emerging so that she could see you, critiqued the blonde. So now what? Questioned Stefan. Now I put this cheeky little minx in time out, and we just so happen to have a place she can't leave available as well," said the blonde before he and his burden vanished in a whirl of golden orbs. When they returned to a solid form, it was in front of the entrance to the tomb in the ruins of Fell's Church. Placing Catherine down and putting his index and middle fingers of his right hand over her heart, he sent a small pulse of lightning chakra into her system. Immediately her body jerked and her eyes snapped open to see Naruto crouching before her. Accepting his offered hand, she stood to her feet before stretching herself out. "That was unpleasant. I take it the plan worked," said the vampire. "Of course, you kept them well distracted," stated Naruto. "Well, I aim to please," said Catherine with a smirk. "So what did you have to do for Lucy to play along?" questioned the blonde. "I had to lick her cunt and promise her that you'll fuck her sometime soon," said Catherine, causing Naruto to raise an eyebrow. "What, it was either that or find another, which we'd have to actually threaten. Lucy's a friend, and the only reason I had to give that much is because she had to lie to Bonnie," said the brunette. "Right. Now for phase 2, do you think they'll take the bait?" questioned Naruto. "Positive. Things should be running exactly on schedule," said the vampire, moving closer to him and unzipping his pants. "Now with that out of the way, I believe you owe me a payment." As she said this, she fished his member out and after moving over to the wall on the exterior of the cave, bent over, bracing her hands on the wall. Naruto, seeing this, smirked and after hiking her dress up and moving her panties to the side, drove himself inside her to the hilt in one swift motion, causing her to cry out into the night. The morning found Naruto at the kitchen table within the savageThor boarding house, eating breakfast while absently listening to Damon rant upon his confrontation with Catherine the previous night. Of course he had known Damon was going to do so, as he had returned to the party with more than enough time to be seen by the guest and host and converse with his younger brothers. Stefan hadn't been as bothered by the trouncing they had received, however Damon's pride had obviously been injured, and as such he'd taken off to the tomb to gloat on them managing to capture her, only for Catherine to leave him more than a little irritated. Honestly, he thought by now Damon would know better. He was nowhere near as sharp-minded as Catherine, who had become a master at arranging pieces to fit whatever strategy she employed. While he had hoped that eventually Damon would shape up, he knew that at this point he could not hope to compete with the elder vampire, and as such engaging her in a war of wits, even one as simple as a verbal spar, would end in Damon's loss. "I don't get it," exclaimed Damon, breaking him from his thoughts. "What now?" questioned Naruto, bringing his attention to his current company. "We have her trapped inside a tomb that has been spelled so that she is incapable of escape." "Yet she was so damn smug about the entire situation," said Damon. "It's because you didn't beat her." "Is she currently trapped in the tomb?" "Certainly. However, you did not win the engagement. She outplayed you mentally and overpowered you physically. As such, she only went down due to the actions of Lucy Bennett. Those actions, however, were not a betrayal but a form of chastisement for not informing her of Bonnie's involvement. She proved that despite my training of you, that the slightest provocation would set the lot of you off and make you easily manipulated. As such, not only did you fail your test, but I lost my bet against her. Don't worry though, now I know it's time to take off the kid gloves," explained Naruto, ending in a tone that promised much pain and suffering before leaving the room. Nearly an hour later found Stefan retrieving his books from his school locker to prepare for his first class of the day. As he did move to close the locker, he was greeted to the sight of Jeremy Gilbert approaching. He could see that the boy looked like he could use a bit more sleep, even if he'd ducked out of the party a bit early. Still, his appearance did well to give an example of why such events should not be held on Sunday evenings, when people needed to be up for school or work the next day. "Look, Alina's got to let me know if I'm supposed to cover for her. Jenna's cool with the two of you, but you guys are pushing it," said Jeremy, skipping the pleasantries altogether. "What are you talking about?" questioned the vampire in confusion. "You and Elena. Look, I'm glad you guys are back together, but if she's gonna sleep over," started Jeremy, only to be cut off. "Wait a minute, we're not back together," said Stefan, stopping Jeremy in his tracks. "Wait, she didn't stay at your place last night?" questioned Jeremy. "No, I saw her for a bit at the party, but I was otherwise occupied, remember?" stated Stefan, causing Jeremy to blink before his eyes widened. Her bed hadn't been slept in and Mrs. Lockwood said that her car was still in the driveway. Where is she then? Questioned the younger Gilbert, something Stefan also wanted to know. Meanwhile, in a secluded country area, an SUV is meeting another car with a man leaning casually against the hood. The man appeared to be in his mid-20s and stood at a respectable height of 6 feet 1 inch and had somewhat long brown hair that reached the nape of his neck and blue eyes. He appeared rather casual in a pair of light blue denim jeans and a black hooded sweater that zipped up the middle. The man pushes himself off of the car and goes over to the man in the SUV who is wearing a cap and sunglasses. Where is she? Questioned the first man. In the trunk. I did exactly what you said, stated the man from the SUV. Good, put her in the back, said the first man, causing the SUV driver to get out of his truck. Going around to the back of the truck and opening the trunk, he revealed the form of Elena Gilbert, arms and legs securely tied up and clearly unconscious. Picking her up easily, showing no strain, the second man quickly loaded her into the back of the smaller car. I take it there were no problems, stated the first man. None. No one was there to see me take her, said the second. Good. Then one last thing, said the first man, placing his hand on the second man's shoulder in a friendly gesture and looking him dead in the eyes, with his eyes shifting in color. Take this bottle of brandy, drink a quarter of it and drive yourself off the nearest cliff, said the first man. As the words registered, the second man accepted the bottle and a few moments later was driving off in his SUV. Seeing him go, the first man turned back and smiled at the unconscious Gilbert girl before climbing into the driver's seat of his own car and pulling off. So then, out of nowhere, Sarah stabs Tyler and he pushed her away and she tripped, fell and hit her head, said Caroline. At the moment, she could be found in her car relating the story of the previous night's events to Damon. Having not been heavily involved with the drama including Catherine, she had stumbled upon the fight between Tyler and Jeff Stevens while on her way to the bathroom. While she had managed to get the two boys apart, she hadn't managed to stop Sarah and Tyler's reaction, which had resulted in her hitting her head on the edge of the desk. Almost immediately, Tyler had dropped to his knees, groaning in pain as his eyes changed, becoming black and yellow. Does Stevens remember anything? Questioned Damon. He thinks he blacked out, but I think they were both compelled by Catherine. That's why I covered for Tyler and said it was an accident. Yeah, I don't understand that. The guy is a tool, said Damon, frowning. Gee, duh. Tyler getting blamed for Sarah's death just opens up questions that he can't answer. And do you really think that it's a good idea for him to tell his mom he's a werewolf? Said Caroline. Honestly, she was not sure why they were even having this conversation. She'd already run through it with Naruto earlier in the morning, and that had merely been as Naruto wanted to be aware of the timeline of events. Explaining things to Damon showed the deficiencies of his mental capabilities, and it soon became obvious that Damon didn't engage his brain for much real thought. Well, no, said Damon after a moment. And that Werewolf Road leads straight to Vampire Boulevard. I was thinking fast on my feet to do you a favor, not that you deserve it. Now I have class. Goodbye, Damon, said the blonde, getting out and walking off in a huff. Meanwhile, in Las Vegas, within the Bellagio Hotel and Casino, inside of a large room that could only be called a study, Elijah McCalson could be found with a book in hand. Surrounding him, also engulfed in their own literature of choice, were his siblings Rebecca and Finn. Of the group so far, only he, Finn and Cole had taken the serum, and the results could be felt quite easily. It had taken them all some time to get used to the increase in their physical abilities and the return of beating hearts as well. The contracts had been all signed and sealed as well, and as such they were only waiting on one final piece of business before the merger was considered complete. His thoughts on the matter were put on hold by the vibrating of his cellular. Removing it from his pants pocket, he answered, and after a few brief minutes of conversation ended the call. Something wrong? Questioned Rebecca, one of her eyebrows raised in question. It appears the message Niklas received this morning was accurate in its predictions, stated Elijah, standing to his feet, removing his sports coat from the back of the chair and placing it on. Going somewhere? Questioned Finn. To verify some information, and if it's correct, to see an old friend, said Elijah, sweeping out of the room. Back within the middle of nowhere, Virginia, the man could be found carrying Elena bridal-style through what looked to be an abandoned house. She had awoken when they arrived after he had picked her up out of the car. Looking up, she was greeted to the face of a man, and while normally she might have called him attractive, under these circumstances she felt that couldn't be further from the truth. Weakly she had tried to get him to let her go, only to be ignored as she was dumped unceremoniously on a couch. With his burden relieved, he made quick work of removing the gag from her mouth and the ropes that had bound her arms and legs. She tried again to plead for him to let her go, only for the words to die in her throat as he leaned in, his face changing and fangs emerging, revealing his vampire nature. "Trevor, control yourself," snapped a voice, causing the vampire to frown before leaving the room. The voice revealed itself to be an attractive and pretty young woman. She stood at about 5 feet 8 inches and had dark brown hair and green eyes. She was dressed casually in a pair of black jeans, a long-sleeved purple shirt, and a pair of black boots. "Oh my God, you look just like her," said the woman. "But I'm not." "Please, whatever you," said Elena, slowly picking herself up from the couch. "Be quiet," said the woman, cutting her off. "But I'm not Catherine. My name is Elena Gilbert. You don't have to do this," said the Gilbert girl. "I know who you are. Now I said be quiet," said the woman. "What do you want?" questioned Elena again. The response she received, however, was not one she was expecting, as the woman backhanded her, hitting her with such force she flew back and landed sprawled out on the couch, once again unconscious. "I want you to be quiet. This has Catherine written all over it," stated Stefan, addressing his brothers. The three could be found standing within the parking lot of Mystic Falls High, just in front of Damon's parked car. "Catherine's in the tomb. Trust me, I'm the one who shut her in," said Damon. "Technically I put there. You just went to visit," said Naruto absently. "She's in the tomb, period. End of story, but she did say something to me right before I left her. I thought she was lying," said Damon. "What did she say?" questioned Stefan, his tone one that demanded an answer. "That Elena was in danger," said Damon. "What? And you didn't think you should ask her to elaborate?" questioned Stefan, anger and exasperation mixing into his voice. "Everything she says is a lie. How am I supposed to know if she's gonna start spouting out the truth?" said Damon. "She was perfectly willing to work with us until you took out her werewolf," said Naruto, reminding them again of Damon's mistake. "We have to go talk to her," said Stefan. No, let me tell you how that's gonna go. We're gonna go ask her for help. She's gonna negotiate her release, which we're gonna be dumb enough to give her, and she's gonna get out and kill us. This is exactly what she wants," said Damon. "She already has exactly what she wanted," said Naruto, massaging the bridge of his nose, catching both of their attention. "She knows Klaus is going to be coming after her. So she tricked you into putting her in the one place Klaus wouldn't go. All she has to do is stay at the back of the tomb and she'll be perfectly fine," said Naruto. "We should still go talk to her." "It's a bad idea, Stefan," said Damon. "It's Elena." Nearly an hour later found Naruto making his way through the halls of the hospital. Stefan and Damon were already on the road and should already be well underway by now. Thankfully for Damon's peace of mind, Bonnie had been able to convince Stefan not to bother with Catherine and instead had done a tracking spell using Jeremy's blood as a focus. On the one hand, it had worked in locating her, on the other it had found that she was 300 miles away. Bonnie and Jeremy had agreed to map it on the computer so they could get an aerial view or any landmarks so they would know exactly where they were heading. Alaric, once he was informed of the situation, had wasted no time in arming the two with whatever weapons they could need. They had thought Naruto would join them only for him to tell them in no uncertain terms he wouldn't be. He felt that with his training they should be more than enough to handle whatever was there, and felt that him going himself was simply overkill. Shaking that thought from his mind, he turned his attention to his surroundings to find Elizabeth Forbes standing not too far ahead of him outside of a room's doorway. "Was this your doing?" questioned Liz almost as soon as he neared her. "I'm sorry," questioned the blonde. "That girl in there died last night. I checked her pulse myself only to learn this morning that she was alive and well," said the sheriff. "I may have had a hand in it," Things needed to be put in motion, however I felt no need for her life to be cut short. Said Naruto. Is she? Stated Liz in a questioning tone, not quite able to get the words out however. No, hers is a true resurrection. She won't remember anything from the other side, so no one needs to know that detail really. Meanwhile on the road, Damon and Stefan were flying down the road. As they had taken his Camaro, Damon had been pushing down the now deserted road with ease. What the hell is that thing? Questioned Damon, eyeing the bottle of clear liquid in his brother's hand. I don't know, it's a vervain bomb or a grenade launcher or something like that. Said Stefan, also curious about it. Weird, said Damon, though Stefan honestly didn't think so. How much further? Questioned Stefan. About 80 miles I think. Said Damon, with was good considering how far they'd gone so far. Thank you for helping me. Said Stefan after a few silent minutes. Can we not do the whole road trip bonding thing? The cliché of it all makes me itch. Oh, come on Damon. We both know that you being in this car has absolutely nothing to do with me anyway. Said Stefan, causing his brother to frown. The elephant in the room lets out a mighty roar. Said Damon, rolling his eyes. Well, it doesn't have to be an elephant. Let's talk about it. Said Stefan. There's nothing to talk about. Said Damon, exasperated. That's not true. I'm sure there is. Just get it out. I mean, are you in this car because you want to help your little brother save the girl that he loves? Or is it because you love her too? I mean, come on, express yourself. I happen to like road trip bonding. Said the younger savageThor. Fine, you want bonding. I'm here because if I wasn't, you'd get yourself killed. Do I think Elena is good looking? Yes. Do I think she's attractive? No. In fact, it's the exact opposite. However, I did plan on taking her from you. Hell, I could sleep with her and not have to close my eyes to see Catherine. Fortunately for you, that thought now makes me want to commit murders so gruesome it would make your other side jealous. So brother, believe me when I tell you I am not here for the sake of Elena fucking Gilbert. As Damon finished his speech, Stefan found himself silenced as he could hear no falsehoods in his brother's voice. At the same time, looking at his brother's face, he didn't know who he was trying to convince more, him or himself. He honestly didn't know how exactly to feel about that either way, and as such they proceeded further in silence. Meanwhile, Elena was sitting on the couch quietly yet deep in thought. She had somehow received a message from Bonnie earlier letting her know that Stefan and Damon were on their way, and as such had tried to stall for time, learning much in the process. Her captors were a pair of siblings by the names of Rose and her friend Trevor. They had been on the run from the originals, the first family of vampires, for 500 years. Apparently they'd run into Catherine when she was first fleeing from Klaus, and the woman had tricked them into feeding her vampire blood before hanging herself. Unfortunately, they had already called for someone named Elijah. Apparently because she was something called a doppelganger, they were hoping to trade her in exchange for their freedom, as apparently her death combined with the moonstone would break the sun and moon curse. Elijah was apparently another of the originals and the older brother of Klaus, who she knew Catherine had spent the last 5 centuries running from. He's here. I told you this was a mistake. Said Trevor, making his way into the room, obviously freaking out and causing both Rose and Elena to look up. No, I told you I would get us out of this. You have to trust me. Said Rose, standing and placing a hand on his shoulder in a gesture to calm him. He wants me dead, Rose. Exclaimed Trevor, not the least bit calm. He'll want her more, okay, trust me. Said Rose. I can't do this. You give her to him, he'll have mercy on you, but I need to get out of here. Said Trevor, his voice quivering in his fear. Just then there was a knock on the door that echoed through the empty halls and into the room. Rose took a moment to further calm her brother, telling him to guard Elena before making her way to the door and opening it to reveal Elijah standing in the doorway. Like always, he was immaculately dressed, wearing a black suit with a blue dress shirt and a black tie with white stripes. His hair was parted to the left and combed neatly to the sides with not a single hair out of place. Rose Marie, is there somewhere we can talk? Said the ancient vampire. Yes, in here. Please excuse the house. Said Rose, standing aside so that he could step through. Oh, no, what's a little dirt? I completely understand. So tell me, what is it that gives you the courage to call me? Questioned Elijah, his tone honestly curious. I wanted my freedom. I'm tired of running. You in a position to grant me that? Stated Rose, her tone turning questioning at the end. I have complete authority to grant pardon to you and your little pet. What is his name these days? Trevor. If I so see fit. Said Elijah. Katerina Petrova. I'm listening. She didn't die in 1864. Said Rose. Continue. You don't seem surprised by this. Stated Rose. Oh, when you called and invited me into this armpit of civilization, which is a mere 3 hours from the town we know as Mystic Falls, I surmised it had everything to do with Katerina. Do you have her in your possession? No, but I have better. I have her doppelganger. Said Rose, actually giving Elijah pause. That's impossible. Her family line ended with her. I know that for fact. Stated Elijah. Considering he had been there when Niklas had murdered the girl's family and burned their home to the ground, he spoke what he knew to be truth. He knew, of course, that Klaus was searching for a doppelganger, however, he thought he was speaking of the unknown line, as it was told that doppelgangers came in pairs. The facts are wrong in this instance. Stated Rose. Show her to me. Stated Elijah, as this was something he would need to see with his own eyes. Elijah, you are a man of honor. You should be trusted, but I need to hear you say it again. Said Rose, surprising Elijah by the faith she still held in his strength of character even after so long. You have my word that I will pardon you. Stated the elder vampire after a moment. Follow me. Outside, Damon's car could be seen not too far from the house, with one brother looking pensive and the other looking anxious. The house should be just beyond those trees. Stated Damon, grabbing Stefan's arm when he moved to exit the car. Wait, I got a lot more experience than you do with those sorts of things. Said Damon. What's your point? My point, brother, is that whoever is in that house is working either for or with Klaus. Stated Damon. And? Questioned Stefan, his impatience clearly showing. And we're talking about people anywhere from 500 to 1,000 years old. As much as I hate to admit it, we both just got our collective asses handed to us by Catherine last night, so are you sure you want to do this? Questioned Damon. Yeah, I'm certain I want to do it. Said Stefan after a few moments. Stefan, if we go in that house, it may well be the last thing we ever do. Said Damon, trying one last time. All right, then I won't come out. I can't think of a better reason to die, but if you want to stay here, I'll totally understand. Stated Stefan before getting out of the car. Sighing at the sight, Damon took a breath, steeling himself before popping the trunk and getting out himself. Meanwhile, back in Mystic Falls, Caroline sighed as she closed the door behind her. She had been dodging Tyler all day after their initial discussion in the halls this morning. He had been regarding her with suspicion all day, and once she'd had to quite literally throw him off of her. What are you doing here? Questioned the girl, turning to her right to find Tyler emerging from the darkness. I know, said the Lockwood heir, stepping towards her. Breaking and entering the sheriff's house. That move will win you an award. Said Caroline, her tone sarcastic. Go ahead. Keep dodging, keep changing the subject, but I know. You're just like me, aren't you? Said Tyler. I'm nothing like you. Said Caroline, growing honestly tired of this. Keep it up, but I'm not buying it. I saw how strong you were. I'm not leaving here until you tell me the truth. Tyler, tried the girl, only to be cut off. You're a werewolf. Admit it. Demanded Tyler, causing her to actually laugh. This, however, must have pushed him a bit too far, as he suddenly pushed her into a wall, causing her to gasp in pain. Before she could react, he had her pinned there as he slaps his hands against the wall on both sides of her with such force one of the pictures comes loose and falls to the floor. Admit it, exclaimed Tyler, now directly in her face. Suddenly her eyes, which had been closed since the impact, snapped open, only now instead of her natural bluish-green coloration they were now a scarlet red in color with vertical slit pupils. Before he could react, she had slammed a palm into his chest that hit with such force he was literally thrown away from her before hitting the ground and sliding across the wooden floor for nearly 3 feet. As he settled and looked up, he could not stop the bolt of fear that was shooting through his body. Enough, Tyler. I'm not a fucking werewolf. exclaimed Caroline. We have a long journey ahead of us, stated Elijah after verifying that Elena was indeed human by the smell of her blood. Please don't do this, pleaded the girl only to be ignored. One last piece of business before we go, said Elijah turning to an approaching Trevor. I've waited so long for this day, Elijah. I'm truly, very sorry, said the younger vampire visibly nervous. Oh no, your apology isn't necessary. Yes it is. You trusted me with Katerina and I failed you, said Trevor. Oh yes, you are the guilty one and Rose aided you because she was loyal to you and that I can honor. Where was your loyalty? Remarked Elijah. I beg your forgiveness, said the younger vampire. So granted, stated Elijah just before a knife hand chop from his right hand took Trevor's head off his shoulders much to Elena's and Rose's horror. You, exclaimed Rose moving to step forward. Don't Rose, now that you are free, stated Elijah turning and pinning her in place with a look that froze her in her tracks. Things are changing for us as a community. We are coming back to the forefront. While I granted you your freedom, all must know of the consequences for betrayal. Trevor will be an example for all, besides I've granted him mercy with such a quick death, stated Elijah removing a handkerchief and using it to clean the blood from his hand before dropping it to the floor. Come, stated Elijah turning a look at Elena. What about the moonstone? Questioned Elena stalling for time. What do you know about the moonstone? Questioned Elijah. I know you need it, said Elena forcing herself to remain calm and resolute. And I can help you get it, said Elena. Tell me where it is, stated Elijah looking into her eyes. It doesn't work like that, stated Elena sounding much braver than she actually was. It's the first I've heard of it, stated Rose as Elijah looked at her. Turning to look back towards Elena, he frowned, wondering why his compulsion hadn't worked. Looking the girl over, his eyes quickly spotted the chain of the necklace she wore. Clever girl wearing vervain around your neck, stated Elijah before reaching over to her and snatching the necklace. As he held it, however, he was struck by its appearance and taken back through his memories for but a moment before coming back to the present. Tell me, child, how did you come to possess this talisman? Said Elijah. My ex gave it to me. He said it would protect me from vampires like him, said Elena, the words coming from her lips despite her attempts to stop them. Who is the ex of yours? Questioned Elijah. Stefan Salvatore. That would explain it, thought Elijah, slipping the necklace into his pocket. Stefan had most likely recovered the necklace when it was first lost, and with no clue of who its true owner was, had kept it for all those decades. He would probably have to thank the boy when everything was over. Tell me where the moonstone is, stated Elijah. Damon had it. He said he was going to put it in the tomb, underneath the church ruins. And why would it be there? Questioned Elijah. It's where they put Catherine. Before any more could be said, the sound of glass shattering could be heard. Who else is in this house? Questioned Elijah. It was just me and Trevor, stated Rose. Grabbing hold of his captive, Elijah led Rose and Elena into the entryway of the house, only for them to be almost immediately surrounded by blurs. Throwing Elena over to Rose, Elijah cracked his neck, however before he could do more he felt something hit his foot. Glancing down, he was just in time to see a small disc open slightly and release a cloud of smoke. The room was quickly filled with smoke, at least as much as he could see. The smoke, however, quickly cleared, only to show both Rose and Elena gone. To whom it may concern, you're making a great mistake if you think that you can beat me. You can't. Do you hear that? Elijah spoke calmly though loudly, his voice carrying through the house. As he did, he moved over to a wooden coat rack and picked it up, removing the metal bits before breaking it and shaping it into a makeshift stake. Stefan, who was currently holding Elena hidden in the shadows of a hall, placed a finger to her lips signaling silence, getting a quick nod. Looking over to Damon, she could see him remove his hand from its position covering Rose's mouth, also motioning for silence. I repeat, you cannot beat me. So I want the girl. I'm gonna count to 3 or heads will roll. Do we understand each other? Looking around, he found Elena standing atop the stairs. Look, I don't want anyone to get hurt, so how about we all just go home? Said the Gilbert girl, only for Elijah to appear in front of her by way of his superior speed. Do you think you can play games with me? Questioned Elijah, his tone showing a slight bit of irritation. Elena, having jumped back in fear at his initial approach, responded by uncrossing her arms, removing a pin and tossing a glass vial at his head. Just before it could hit him, it exploded outwards, showing him with glass shards, and Vervain electing a pained yell from him, causing him to drop the Kotrak in the process. Abruptly the yell cut off and he lifted his head, showing his face already healing the burns at a phenomenal rate, and in less than 3 seconds his skin looked as if nothing had happened. Stefan chose just that moment to emerge, firing shots from what looked like a shotgun at him. As the first hit, Elijah staggered back and looked down to find a dart pumping Vervain into his chest. Ripping it out, he looked up just time to get hit by another. Seeing how he was affected by the first shot, Stefan immediately off the final 2, one slamming into his chest and another hitting him in the stomach. Each shot had forced the elder vampire further back until he was nearly back on ground level. Damon chose just that moment to make his move. Using his speed, he picked up the makeshift stake and slammed it home directly into the center of his chest, pushing him back until the wood was embedded into a wall, pinning him there. He stood there holding it until the telltale veins of desiccation appeared across Elijah's face, signaling his death. Turning around, he was just in time to see Rose, whose eyes had widened in shock, disappear in a blur. At the same time, Elena had arrived and thrown her arms around Stefan, with both of them relaxing and Elena sending him a silent thank you. "All right guys, let's get out of here. We've still got a long road ahead of us," said Damon, walking out, opening the door about 3 feet away from Elijah and walking out. Once they were loaded in and the car was pulling away, another figure emerged from the shadows, revealing itself to be Naruto. Looking over at Elijah, he had to admit to being slightly pleased before moving into the next room and coming back with a chair. Once that was done, he settled down and placing his earbuds in, started up a musical playlist on his phone and proceeded to wait. Sometime later, his attention was grabbed by some shifts in motion and he looked up in time to see Elijah's eyes snap open and witness him pull the Kotrak out of his chest. 3 hours exactly. Not bad considering you were also pumped full of Vervain, said the blonde. I must admit to some surprise. I did not expect to still be aware of the world around me, incapacitated as I was, stated Elijah, removing the now empty Vervain darts. What did you think of them? Questioned the blonde. They did pretty well. There was no grandstanding or words of any kind. Considering I performed at my pre-serum levels, I think that's saying something, stated Elijah. Perhaps that ass-kicking Katarina handed to them last night did more good than I thought, said Naruto. Oh, tell me more, said Elijah, sitting down on the stairs as the two got lost in conversation. The drive back home had taken them a little over 4 hours, time Elena had spent in the back of the Camaro with Stefan. She had sent messages to Bonnie, Caroline, Alaric and Jeremy, explaining to all that she was fine and that they were on their way back. After that, she had taken a nap until they came to a stop for fuel, during which time her bladder had made itself known, as had her stomach. After using the restroom, she'd grabbed a hot dog from the store of the gas station, which she ate quickly before they were back on their way. Now, after a much-needed shower, she was dressed for bed and making her way into her room to find Damon seated within. Cute PJs, stated the vampire. I'm tired, Damon, said Elena with a sigh. Understandable. However, I brought you a gift. As he said this, he held up a necklace. Jewelry. Seriously, Damon, let's not do this, said the girl warily. It was our mother's. Stefan thought you should have it. I told him I'd drop it off since I was already about to head out for a meeting with Liz and the rest of the council, explained Damon, holding his hand out only to snatch it back when she reached for the necklace. Just like the last one, this one is filled with Vervain, get it? Said Damon, getting an understanding nod from the girl. One last thing then before I give it to you, said Damon. Damon, don't go there, said Elena, already knowing where this road of conversation could lead. I do have feelings for you, Elena, and it's due to those feelings that I have to be straight with you and myself. I could see myself loving you, but I love being a vampire. It's what I wanted, what I asked for. Stefan never wanted it. I don't think you ever will either. I think I may have even projected whatever positive feelings I still have for Catherine onto you as well. You remind me of who I thought she was. So for that reason I need to let you go. I spent 145 years waiting for Catherine and I never discovered who exactly Damon is. What I do know is that I don't deserve you, my brother does. As he said this, he approached her and placed a kiss on her forehead before looking into her eyes. Nearly a minute later, Elena blinked and found herself alone in her room with the necklace that Stefan had gifted to her in her hand. Looking down on it, she found that it possessed a silver link chain on which dangled a locket that was silver and had a triquetra intercepted with a circle designed into it on the front. Placing it on, she climbed into bed and into a restful sleep. Meanwhile, at the savageThor boarding house, Stefan could be seen within the library with a glass of bourbon in hand. The sound of the wind moving at speed caught his attention, and the way it moved told him he had a vampire guest. "You may as well come out," stated Stefan, pouring another glass. "I'm not here to hurt you," stated Rose, appearing from the doorway. "Then why are you here?" questioned Stefan before taking a sip of his drink. "Lexi tells me you're one of the good ones," said Rose, accepting the offered drink. "You know her?" questioned Stefan in surprise. "Quite well. We've been friends for centuries and we keep in touch," stated Rose, taking a seat and taking a sip of the drink. "Trevor was my best friend. For 500 years I have lived with one person and he's gone, and I don't want to run anymore because I don't have anywhere else to run to," said the woman. "Sorry, but I don't see how I can help with that," said Stefan. "I don't need your help, but I think you need mine. Elijah may be dead, but this isn't over," said Rose. "You're talking about Klaus," said Stefan after a moment. "I'm talking about all of them. Elijah was the only one in perfect control of his bloodlust. He kept the others, even Klaus, from going too far. Now they'll come for her, and when they do, they'll come with force. Now they'll be doing it for him," said Rose, causing Stefan to take the remainder of his glass in one go as a sense of foreboding came over him. Far above him and above Mystic Falls in general, Naruto stood suspended in midair with his arms crossed. "Now, little brothers, prove to me your worth," said the blonde, his eyes shining with anticipation. Chapter 11. As the early morning light dawned over the town of Mystic Falls within a thicket of trees near the old savageThor mansion, Naruto could be found in the midst of a kata, his katana moving as a blur. It has been a week since Alina's brief kidnapping. Despite the small bit of time that had passed, however, quite a few things had happened. Rose, who had arrived in town that same night, had agreed to work with Stefan and Damon for the coming trouble. Following this agreement, Rose and Damon had taken a small trip to meet with one of her contacts, Slater, concerning information about the Moonstone, only to find out that Elijah was not as dead as they believed when he appeared and killed the contact. At the same time, Elena has gone to the tomb and had spoken with Catherine. They had discussed many things, including his own history with her history with Klaus, and why he was chasing her. In the end, he knew that Catherine had put the fear of the devil into the girl, as she had approached him about getting Jenna out of Dodge that same night. It had been a quick bit of work for him to get Jenna to head back out to school, which she'd be doing in the next few days. At the same time, a couple of new people had arrived in town that he had a pair of clones watching due to their interest in Bonnie. Following that, Damon, Stefan, Jeremy and Bonnie came up with a plan to get the Moonstone back, as its location had been compromised. While they'd gotten the stone out, Jeremy hadn't been quite fast enough to avoid Catherine, who kept him with her for a few hours until she gave him permission to leave. Elena and Rose, meanwhile, had taken a trip to see what they could learn about how Slater contacted Klaus, only for Elena's stupidity to strike and for her to reach out and offer her surrender. Caroline and Tyler had done some investigating of their own and come across Mason's journal and a flash drive which had a video of him during one of his transformation, something that had shaken both of them to the core. Sighing as he finished his kata and brought himself out of his thoughts, the blonde began to wonder why everyone in this little circle was acting so damn stupid. It was only a matter of time until Klaus was due to arrive, and while he had gotten Elijah to put out the little fire that Elena had caused with her recklessness, it was all starting to grate on his nerves. Looking up at the sky and seeing the sun had not yet appeared and his internal clock told him that he'd maxed out his training time for the morning, the blonde sheathed his katana before vanishing in a swarm of orbs. "You know, I've got to admit, locking you in the house was brilliant," stated Naruto nearly an hour later as he stood in the living room of the Gilbert house just before the front door opened and closed. You should really lock your door, said Damon as he made his way in. Oh, come on, Pouty. At least give me 2 points for ingenuity, continued the vampire, seeing the expression on Elena's face. You two think this is funny? Questioned Elena, frowning. Yes, said Naruto without hesitation. I find hilarity in the lengths that I have to go to repeatedly save your life, said Damon, a touch of annoyance in his tone. And what does Stefan say about this? Questioned Elena. We had a good laugh, stated Damon, taking a seat in a chair across from her. What did he say about Elijah still being alive? Questioned the girl. Didn't tell him, stated Damon simply. Why not? Questioned Naruto, having figured he would. Well, A. There's nothing he can do about it. B. Well, C. Reason A, said Damon, getting Naruto to chuckle just as Jeremy walked in. Where's Bonnie? Questioned Damon after looking around. Thought she was meeting with you, said Jeremy. No, she's on Moonstone duty and I'm on Elena patrol, stated Damon. Moonstone duty? Questioned Naruto. She's trying to figure out a way to break the sun and moon curse, said Jeremy, causing Naruto to snort. Well, that's not happening. That rock was spelled by a very powerful and knowledgeable witch. Bonnie's training only started this year, and despite her training, she's a long way from being able to break that type of magic, said Naruto, causing both males to frown. Okay, who's on Tyler Lockwood and the full moon? Questioned Jeremy after a moment. Kitsune Barbie asked me if she could handle it, and I said, why not? Figured if she screwed up, he'll bite her and then I'll be rid of 2 of my problems, said Damon. Please, as if something as weak as a little werewolf venom could kill her, said Naruto. Well, way to rain on my parade, said Damon, getting a cheeky 2-fingered salute from the blonde. Hold on a second. Tonight's the full moon, said Elena. Yup, but you were too absorbed with your suicidal tendencies to notice, said Damon, just as his phone started to ring, causing him to get up to answer. You know he's right. Once this current situation plays out, I'm taking you to see Cordy, said Naruto. Stefan's therapist, said Elena, frowning. Well, I could take you to someone else, but I'm pretty sure your problem is fairly simple and Cordy is closer, said Naruto with a shrug before his own phone rung. Change of plans. You babysit, said Damon, walking back into the room just as Naruto walked out. What's wrong? Questioned Jeremy, now laying on the couch with his head in Elena's lap. Mason Lockwood just made the missing persons list and one of his friends just strolled into town. I'm meeting Rick at the grill to see if we can figure out what's going on, said Damon before leaving the room just as Naruto returned. Listen, I have to pay Bonnie a quick visit and then run an errand. Keep an eye on her. Let me know if anything happens. And you stay out of trouble, said Naruto, speaking to Jeremy and then Elena in turn before orbing out. Since when are you the responsible one? Questioned Elena. Since you decided to be all suicidal, remarked Jeremy, causing Elena to push him off her and onto the floor. Elsewhere, Caroline and Tyler had just pulled into a stop deep in the woods surrounding the town. With her and Matt officially taking a break, Caroline had been left with a lot of free time and as such had volunteered to babysit Tyler, if only so that she would feel useful. They had met at the grill where Tyler had informed her that some girl had come to town looking for Mason. Thankfully, Alaric had been sitting nearby and heard the whole thing, so while she was running interference with Tyler, the history teacher would be trying to figure out what exactly was going on. Maybe he just stopped to go surf somewhere. Isn't that Mason's whole thing? Questioned the girl as she climbed out of the driver's seat, popping the trunk as she did. Maybe. This girl just seemed to think he would have called, said Tyler, grabbing his bags out of the trunk before closing it. Who is she anyway? Questioned Caroline. Said her name is Jules. Far as I know, they're just friends, said Tyler before leading her off deeper into the woods. Meanwhile, outside the gates of the Lockwood mansion, a young woman could be seen sitting inside a light blue Toyota Land Cruiser. The woman herself had dark blonde hair and blue eyes and had a frown on her face as she scrolled through the contacts of her phone before making a selection. Hey Oz, it's Jules. Hey, what's the word? Came the voice from the other end. No one knows where Mason is. He's missing, said Jules. Perhaps it was too early to let him head out on his own. I think you're right. Plus there's another problem. His nephew left him a message this morning freaking out about the full moon. I think this may be his first, said Jules. Something is off. Keep your wits about you and keep in contact. Right. I'll call with an update once I learn more, said Jules before ending the call and pulling off. Naruto meanwhile was busy. He had gone to check up with Bonnie only to learn that this new guy Lucas Martin was a witch and had been hitting on her pretty hard. However, once he learned that she had a boyfriend and was only interested in being friends, he backed off a little bit. Still, she was suspicious as he seemed far too interested, so she was playing along to see what he wanted. He of course warned her to be careful as he had a feeling he was working for Klaus. As the guy wanted to meet up, he advised her to take the moonstone but to also to take Emily's fake grimoire. At the moment he stood within a large armory which was actually his personal weapon storage. The place had many weapons, various swords could be seen resting on weapon racks from great bastard swords, katanas, kodachis and even a rapier. A strange collection of 7 swords could be seen on a wall, many of them with peculiar appearances. The walls also contained polearms such as spears, naganatas, halberds, bow staffs and even a trident. There also appeared to be several different types of bows and even a few war hammers. He had glass cases which contained shuriken, kunai, knives and several kinds of handguns. In the very back of the room, sniper and assault rifles could be seen on their own racks as could shotguns. Well, it seems your collection has done some growing, said his companion. His companion was a man who stood at about 5 feet 11 inches and had long black hair that was pulled into a ponytail and narrowed brown eyes. He was dressed in a rather formal black kimono with matching hakama with a katana at his side. His expression was one of tiredness which matched the aura he gave off. He was one of Naruto's oldest friends, Nara Shikamaru, the god of darkness, knowledge, strategy and creation, and to this day still his top advisor. Thanks for coming, said Naruto. No problem, I was bored anyway. Honestly, waifu insisted on dragging me to Soul Society when nothing's predicted to happen for a while is beyond me, said Shikamaru. But wasn't it your idea for people to already be there and established before trouble could pop off? Questioned Naruto. So, it didn't mean I wanted to do it, said Shikamaru, getting a chuckle from his friend. Anyway, I need you to take a few things to the Nexus world for me, said the blonde, causing to raise an eyebrow. Didn't Tenten just go over there? Questioned the Nara. She did. Said she wanted to live a human life again, answered the blonde, getting Shikamaru to roll his eyes. So what do you need? Questioned Shikamaru. Simple delivery. Memory modules for my godly personalities there. One for my dad, Hinata and Sasuke as well, said the blonde, causing the Nara to snort. He's not doing anything, why don't we just have him merge with the one already there? Said the Nara, getting Naruto to pause. Sure, if you can convince him. The relationship between Naruto and Sasuke was a complicated one to say the least. Sasuke had tried to kill him when they were 13 and failed due to his unique healing factor. When they were 17, just after they had dealt with Madara and Kagaya during the war, Naruto had returned the favor when Sasuke tried to betray them by bisecting him clear across the stomach. Sasuke had only lived due to Sakura's quick actions saving his life. Over time they had rebuilt their relationship, but they were still rivals, and more than once Naruto had set out on another human life only to find Sasuke there as well, always acting as a rival. The last time they'd crossed paths in such a way had been in Japan in the 1800s during the Bakumatsu, as he under the name Kenshin clashed multiple times with who he only later learned was Sasuke under the name Hajime Saito. While you're there you can drop these off too, said the blonde, pushing away the thoughts as he motioned to the new sword in its pen form and the axe hammer that Tenten had made previously. Moving over, Shikamaru stood in front of each item, engulfing them in darkness before they disappeared before their eyes. Listen, Ino and Choji are both there, so you can hang out for a bit if you want, said Naruto after a moment. Good, I need a small vacation before I go back to boredom, said Shikamaru, the two bumping fist before he vanished into his own shadow and disappeared from the blonde's senses. Within a system of caves, Tyler and Caroline could be seen securing chains to the walls. Well, Tyler was working while Caroline was simply watching. "Tell me you brought the instruction manual," said the girl after a few moments. "Tell me you brought the wolfsbane," said Tyler in return. "Yes, it wasn't easy to find, but I got some," said the girl, getting him to stop. As he moved over to her, Caroline pulled out a Ziploc bag from which she produced the herb for him to see. As she removed it, Tyler went to touch it only for it to immediately burn his fingers, causing him to release it with a hiss. "I have a water bottle in my bag, we can mix it in there," said the Lockwood heir, moving to continue securing the chains. Meanwhile, inside of the tomb, Catherine was going through a series of katas, slowly moving from one position to the next. Over the centuries since she had first met Naruto, she had traveled the world, and though she was effectively on the run and in hiding, had learned many forms of martial arts. She was now at the point where she could confidently say that she was a master in many of them. Across from her, Stefan quietly watched her going through the motions and really hadn't said a word since Damon left a few hours ago. Stefan had been in here with her since it had been part of the deal in allowing Jeremy out. Catherine had waited until the others were well out of hearing distance before telling Stefan he was an idiot for agreeing so easily. "So do you want to tell me why you're so calm?" stated Stefan after a few more silent moments. "Why shouldn't I be?" questioned the elder vampire. "How about the fact we're trapped in this tomb when any moment Klaus could be descending on this town?" said the savageThor, as if it should be obvious. "Klaus coming here was always part of the plan, nothing to worry about," said Catherine. "Except before he wasn't coming with vengeance in mind. Now that Elijah's dead," started Stefan, only for her to snort. "You couldn't kill Elijah on your best day and his worst. Elijah is nearly 1,000 years old and you're comparatively a toddler," said Catherine. "Damon rammed a wooden coat rack through his heart, that would do it," said Stefan. "No, it wouldn't. It would knock him out for a bit but not kill him. Here's some knowledge for you from someone who knows them. Firstly, if you actually had succeeded in killing Elijah, then Klaus would already be here. Elijah, like Klaus, is an original, and he's not some regular soldier or enforcer. As for Damon staking him, good job, probably just impressed or annoyed him though. Unlike with us, a stake to the heart will not kill an original, as they'll eventually shrug it off. Rumor is that there is only one kind of wood that could permanently take one down, and not only did they destroy it all, but its mere memory has been lost to time," said Catherine, causing him to freeze, much to her amusement. "Now you see what the situation really is. Bet you wish you hadn't turned down that thermos now," said Catherine before going back to her kata. While the others were dealing with things in their own ways, Bonnie could be found at the home of the new transfer student Luca Martin. They had been speaking for quite a while, deep in discussion about ways in which they could destroy the Moonstone. Her eyes every once in a while would dart around the room at all of the leather-bound tomes, which she had learned were actually all grimoires his father had collected. He was actually quite the powerful witch, as she had discovered when she had allowed him to teach her how to channel another's magic. During her time training with Prue, they had spent an entire weekend within a sort of time room where they'd been able to spend an entire 2 years training. During this time, Prue had helped her to master her telekinesis, pyrokinesis, and biokinesis, among other things. As such, Bonnie had known how to channel well before she had met Luca, but as he had been practicing magic much longer than her, listened as he most likely had a much greater understanding of magic. She would also admit, if only to herself, that she could have been taken in by his charm if not for having been with Naruto for so long, and as such, while she felt he could be a good friend one day, was not attracted to him in the least. "Listen, I think we're going about this the wrong way," said the boy, catching her attention. "We've been trying to come up with a way to depower the talisman for hours," said Luca. "Yesen?" questioned Bonnie. "I think we shouldn't worry about that. If we can't find a way to depower it, why not just destroy the talisman altogether?" said Luca. "Well, it would have the benefit of me never having to worry about it again," said Bonnie after a few moments of thought. The two, having agreed on a course of action, soon were back into research mode, only now that research was going into a way to destroy the talisman. If there was one thing that she had learned while studying under Prue, it was that witches were very good at coming up with ways to destroy things. At the Gilbert house, Elena sighed as she made her way down the stairs towards the kitchen. Having been stuck in the house the entire day, she had spent the day watching movies in order to stave off her boredom. Having watched The Hangover, Superbad and the first two American Pie movies had been a good way to kill time, and she was just going for a drink before she continued her movie marathon. However, it was as she descended the stairs that she found Jenna rummaging through the closet. "What are you doing?" questioned the younger girl. "Perfect timing," said Jenna, removing a box and handing it to her niece. "What's all this?" questioned Elena. "Your mom's files from the Historical Society. I got roped into helping Mrs. Lockwood, and by roped, I mean very excited to participate," stated Jenna before closing the closet door, revealing a very familiar person standing there, having previously been blocked by the door. "Hey, I'm Elijah," said the man, nearly making her scream. "Elijah's in town doing research on Mystic Falls," said Jenna, moving over and taking the boxes from Elena and moving away while Elijah stepped closer to Elena. "It's a pleasure," stated Elijah, shaking Elena's hand, smirking in that she was literally trembling. "So you're welcome to stay here and rummage through this stuff, or Elena and I could help you load it into your car," said Jenna, making her way back over, having put down the box. "Or I could get someone to come and pick it up tomorrow," said Elijah. "Also a good plan," said Jenna. "Thank you so much for inviting me into your home, Jenna, and Elena, I hope to see you again sometime soon," said Elijah before allowing Jenna to escort him to the door. Once they were gone, she made a mad dash up the stairs, heading straight to Jeremy's room and knocking repeatedly on the door. Frantic as she was, she would have knocked more if not for the fact that her wrist was grabbed, and eyes wide with fright, she shakily followed the capturing hand to find Elijah standing before her. As Jeremy finally came to the door, headphones around his neck, she could have strangled him. However, instead she came up with a shaky excuse about Jenna needing help with boxes and watched him head down the stairs. "A wise choice. Now I think it's time you and I had a little chat." Naruto meanwhile sat inside the IMF New York facility within a conference room with several other individuals. His eldest child and firstborn son Boruto was leading the meeting. Also in attendance was Jackson Briggs, the director for covert operations. The director of information operations, Rachel Knight, a busty redhead who looked about 25, sat next to him. They had all been in attendance to overlook an operation in Russia when Naruto had ordered the operatives to kill all comms and abort. The team led by Ethan Hunt had been forced to cut out early without all of the information, but they were out of the building within 5 minutes. Within the next 10 they were well out of the area just as the target building, the Kremlin, exploded. "What the hell just happened?" questioned Jax, not believing what they were watching. "Rachel, I need you to dig for a target. Ready?" With her affirmative, he quickly transformed, becoming an older man with slicked back, graying black hair. Rachel, her phone already out, snapped a quick picture before immediately heading out to get to work. "Lord Naruto," came a new voice, catching his attention. Turning to it, he found his assistant Cassandra standing in the doorway. Motioning her inside, he invited her to take a seat, which she did before speaking up while pulling out a tablet. "The situation with Toretto resolved itself, and you were right. The FBI reneged on the deal as soon as they met up. However, Arturo Braga was captured by Toretto and O'Connor." "What about the FBI mole?" questioned Boruto. "Not yet," said the assistant. "All right, have the boys keep an eye on O'Connor. If things go as I predict and Dom is screwed by the courts, O'Connor won't stand for it," stated Naruto. "You think he'll break him out?" questioned Jax. "That's what I'm expecting. Anything else?" returned and asked Naruto. "Alex and Nikita have made their move. Alex was just taken in by division by their usual MO, said Cassandra. "Jax, have a team monitor the situation, recon only," said Boruto, getting a nod from the man. "Neil Caffrey just escaped from prison," said Cassandra. "This should be fun. Should we go get him?" questioned Jax. "No, let Burke chase him again. I want to see if he's good enough for us," said Boruto, getting a nod from Jax. "Michael Weston was burned and has been dumped in Miami by the CIA," said Cassandra. "Do we know who did it?" questioned Boruto. "Not yet. Our people are looking into though," stated Cassandra. "Right, anything else? Someone on our watch list?" Keith Scott was killed in Tree Hill last week. Read Cassandra. What? Exclaimed both Naruto and Boruto, jumping out of their seats. According to the report, there was a shooting in the school. It was ruled a murder-suicide by the locals. Jax, you're in charge, exclaimed Boruto just before he and Naruto both vanished into golden-colored orbs. Back in Mystic Falls, the duo of Elena and Elijah had retreated to her room, where Elijah could be seen standing in the window. "Forgive the intrusion. I mean your family no harm," stated the vampire as he turned to face her. "So why did you kill those vampires yesterday?" questioned the girl. While she had been out with Rose yesterday and decided to turn herself in, Elijah had surprised them by appearing and killing the 3 vampires who'd come to deliver her to Klaus. "Because I didn't want you to be taken. Klaus is the most feared and hated of the originals, but those that fear him are desperate for his approval. If word gets out that the doppelganger exists, there'll be a line of vampires eager to take you to him, and I can't have that." "Isn't that exactly what you're trying to do?" questioned the girl. "At this moment, no. While the curse will indeed need to be lifted, it's not yet time. If I were to take you now, your chances of survival would reduce to 0. I need to give my people more time so that the curse can be lifted, but your survival assured," stated Elijah. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" questioned Elena. "If I wasn't being truthful, all your family would be dead and I'd be taking you to Klaus right now. Instead, I'm here and I'm prepared to offer you a deal." "What kind of deal?" "Do nothing. Do nothing. Live your life. Stop fighting, and then, when the time is right, you and I shall call on Klaus together, and I shall make sure your friends and family remain unharmed," said Elijah. "Just like that. I'm a man of my word, Elena. I make a deal, I keep a deal," stated Elijah. "How do you intend to keep me alive?" questioned Elena. "I notice you have a friend, Bonnie, is it? She seems to possess the gift of magic." "I have friends with similar gifts," stated Elijah. "You know witches?" questioned Elena in shock. "I was born a witch. Magic and vampirism, however, don't mix well," stated Elijah. "It's against the laws of nature," stated Elena. "You've been studying," said Elijah. "Catherine was born a witch as well. I figure if I'm her magical duplicate, I should study it. Who knows, one day I could tap into it," stated the girl. Naruto and Boruto appeared in the parlor of the savageThor boarding house nearly 2 hours after they'd left the meeting, both of them looking a combination of tired and angry. They had spent the last few hours in Tree Hill, North Carolina, going over the scene. The scene had been cleaned for the most part, with the chalk outlines of the 2 people who had been killed all that remained. One of them had been a teen by the name of James Edwards, and the other had been of Keith Scott. However, standing over the outline had been the spirit of Namikaze Minato, Naruto's father and Boruto's grandfather. His parents had decided to live human lives in this world, and Minato had been placed in the stillborn body of Keith Scott, and while his mother Uzumaki Kushina had been placed in the body of Karen Rowe. As a standard procedure, the 2 had no idea who they were once they were put in the bodies, and were for all intents and purposes those people. Though it had taken a while to both find each other and to get together, the 2 had only just gotten engaged in their human forms when Keith was killed. His father was understandably furious, and in his anger had summoned a storm that was still going strong over the entire state of North Carolina. Moving over to a nearby table, Naruto poured them both a drink from a nearby bottle of bourbon, which both quickly downed. This was the scene Damon stumbled onto as he entered the house, and after pouring the vampire a drink, Naruto felt his irritation only heighten. Damon had spent the day at the grill investigating the mysterious jewels, and while normally he'd have applauded this, he picked the worst possible time and the worst possible manner. He tried to slip wolfsbane in her drink on the day of the full moon when her senses were at their most heightened. Not only that, but he'd unnecessarily antagonized her and made himself a target. Knowing werewolves as well as he did, however, he channeled a bit of chakra and snapped the fingers of his right hand. After he did, there was a sound of shifting and slamming metal as bars suddenly appeared around the windows and doors. At the same time, he felt the wards of the house strengthen in intensity, and being the sort of paranoid bastard that being a shinobi had made him, his wards were powerful enough that this place had just become one of the most secure places on this version of Earth. Damon meanwhile seeing the mood the two were in made a strategic retreat and headed to the library only to find Rose already there. You just can't stay away, can you? Said the savageThor. You don't answer your phone. Said the woman. What do you want? Questioned Damon. To apologize. Just admit you just don't have anywhere else to go. Said Damon after a moment. I'm sorry about Elena. I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't know that she had a death wish, but I called you. I tried to make it right, okay? I'm sorry, Damon. And I have nowhere else to go. Said Rose, getting Damon to smirk at the end. Before the two could continue the conversation, there was a sound as if a gong had been struck that echoed through the house before a high-pitched pain yelp hit their ears. What was that? Questioned Rose. The sound a werewolf makes when it meets the defenses around this house. Said Damon, pouring himself a drink. Defenses? Questioned Rose. Well, as you know, Naruto is not a vampire. He has become a part of nature itself, and as such his magic is very powerful. On top of his other skills he has available, this house can at any time turn into a virtual fortress. Back in the tomb, the two vampires had been speaking for a while now. With it clear Catherine was not interested in him, Stefan had finally asked her the question he most wanted known, why she turned him. Shrugging it off, she told him truthfully that she hadn't meant to turn him yet, and that the only reason he was a vampire was because Damon had acted irrationally and gotten them both killed. However, as a vampire at the time, she hadn't been able to think of anything more romantic than sharing her blood with him. Stefan had no choice but to agree, as it was a very intimate gesture on her part. The sound of a door opening, however, had them rushing to the entrance only to find Elijah standing there. Elijah, said the surprised Catherine. Good evening, Katerina. Thank you for having the good sense to be frightened, stated Elijah before turning his attention to Stefan. Your release has been requested, stated the original. What, by who? Questioned Stefan in surprise. Young Elena drives a hard bargain. However, we reached a peaceful agreement, she and I. Please, stated Elijah, motioning for Stefan to step out. I can't, said Stefan. Yes, you can. I've had the spell lifted, said Elijah in response. Hesitantly, Stefan reached his hand out and slowly extended it, becoming pleased to find the barrier was indeed gone. Stepping out of the cave nervously at a look from Elijah, he turned to move away. Catherine, seeing this, took the chance to speed away only to slam into the barrier. Elijah, seeing this, simply moved to stand directly in front of her, looking her in the eye. As for you, however, you should not exit until I say so. When Klaus comes, he'll want to know exactly where you are, said the original before turning away from her. You're free to go. Elena will explain the arrangement to you. If she keeps her word, I'll keep mine, said the eldest vampire to Stefan before leaving. The morning found Naruto standing outside of the Bennett house, leaning against the hood of his car with Bonnie wrapped up in his arms. They had been speaking quietly about the previous night's events. Bonnie had been quite pleased when she reported the Moonstone's destruction, so much so in fact that he hadn't wanted to tell her that her new friend Luca hadn't actually destroyed it but switched it out. The real stone, he revealed, Luca had given to his father, who had in turn delivered it to Elijah. Caroline had called Bonnie during this time and informed them both of what had transpired the previous night with Tyler and his transformation. Stefan had apparently spent the night with Elena, and when he woke up this morning, Damon and Rose had been in bed together. How that would develop he couldn't say, but it wasn't any of his business really. He was just glad that he wasn't still trying to sniff Elena's panties. So what's your plan for today? Questioned the blonde. Studio session. I'm supposed to meet Tim and Missy in a couple of hours, said the witch. Okay, I have to head out to North Carolina for the day. I'll check in with you later, said the blonde. What do you want me to tell the others? Questioned the girl. I want everyone to lay low. I'm in no mood for any more foolishness. You take Caroline with you. Everyone else is to stay home today, said the blonde seriously, getting a nod from her. Giving her one last kiss as she pulled away, Naruto climbed into the passenger seat. Boruto from the driver's seat gave her a wave before they were pulling off. Caroline sighed as she sat in front of the Donovan house. After the misadventure with Tyler the werewolf during the night, she'd come almost directly to Matt's and had been sitting outside for nearly an hour now. She had thought to come over several times since she'd put their relationship on hold but had always turned away. After last night's events, however, she couldn't do that, not again. Climbing out of the car and approaching the door, she was surprised to see it open at that moment. Matt looked at her in surprise before his face took on a neutral expression. "Can we talk?" questioned the girl, getting him to sigh and motion for her to come in. They'd made the 3-hour drive to Tree Hill in silence for the most part. While it wouldn't be the first time that a family member died while in one of their incarnation periods, it was the first time that one of them was murdered. By the time they pulled up to the high school, the scene was filled with their people who were dressed as federal agents. The agent in charge of the scene, Victoria Murphy, had assured them that with the multitude of cameras inside the school they'd be able to identify the shooter. Apparently, after the shooting in Columbine High School in 1999, the government had implanted a number of spy cameras inside the halls of the Middle American high schools. Because the cameras weren't theirs, the agents would need to do a bit of work to get access to the feed and recordings, but were positive they'd have it all done that day. With this information in hand, Naruto had felt secure enough to go and visit his mother. With Boruto tagging along, they'd made the trip to a house located at 1829 Burnett Drive. Climbing out of the car, Naruto could be seen wearing a deep navy blue wool and cashmere suit with gray pinstripes with a light blue collared shirt and a silk tie that was a dark red in color, along with a pair of black leather Oxfords with a square toe. On his face he wore a pair of black square-framed glasses, the lenses of which darkened as he stepped into the sun, and his whisker markings were nowhere to be seen. Boruto was dressed similarly, only his suit was black in color with a white shirt and a black tie. Approaching the door and looking each other over, Naruto nodded before ringing the bell. As the door was opened, it revealed a woman who stood at 5 feet 4 inches with short-cut brown hair and green eyes. As their eyes locked, the woman found her own entranced on the strange purple orbs that were his eyes before Naruto spoke but a single word. "Remember." At his word, her own eyes flashed violet for a moment before they cleared and were green again. She blinked, and when she opened her eyes and saw them once more, her posture relaxed. "Naruto," greeted the woman. "Hi, Mom," said the blonde before he was pulled into a hug. "Sounds like you've been busy," stated Kushina as she handed a plate to her son and grandson respectively, though still under the guise of Karen Rowe. "True, but it keeps me from boredom, so that's a plus," said Boruto. Over the last 45 minutes they had spent the time catching up on what they had been up to. Kushina, as the goddess of motherhood, home and family, she had become something of a confidant to the family. With her many grandchildren to spoil as well, she was perhaps the most beloved of all of them. "So how is your father?" questioned the woman. "He's pissed, to put it mildly. However, according to Ba-chan and Sakura-chan, we can put his spirit into another body. So they're looking into ways to do that," said Naruto. Before he could speak on more, his phone rang, and looking at the screen he found that it was a video call from Agent Murphy. Answering the phone, he held it out in front of him so he could be seen. "What's wrong?" questioned the blonde. "We've found something." The team started picking up low levels of kitsune energy in the school. At first we thought it was just Lord Minato, but the energy lingered in different places and slightly different signatures. One was obviously Lord Minato's, which leaked from his Keith Scott body. We called in Agent Danvers for help, and she was able to track and put names to the energy. One was from a Lucas Scott who was in the library, and the other was found in a classroom from a Nathan Scott. According to Agent Danvers, these two boys are his sons, explained Agent Murphy. "I see. Anything else?" "We've gotten into the network. We've got the identity of the shooter," said the woman. "All right, take them into custody. This one's our prisoner. I want them prosecuted on a federal level," said the blonde. "Will do," said the woman before he cut the call. "So now we have to find these boys," said Boruto. "Well, Lucas is my son, only I thought he was Dan's. Times line up though. As for Nathan, we all thought he was Dan's by a woman named Deb." "I'll talk to her," said Kushina. "Hey, Mom," called a voice from the door, only to stop upon entering the room. "Lucas, good you're here. Have a seat," said the woman, getting him to sit. Lucas was a young man of perhaps 17 or 18. He had short-cut blonde hair and blue eyes and possessed a lean and athletic frame. "There are a few things we need to talk about," said the mother, starting a conversation that would change the life of her son. "Going somewhere?" questioned Matt, lying on his side. At his question, Caroline paused, clad in just her panties with her bra only half on. With Naruto's declaration of spending the previous day indoors, Caroline had taken to spending her time with Matt. The only time she hadn't been with him was the few hours she was with Bonnie at her studio session. "Home for one. I wasn't exactly planning on staying the night when I came over yesterday," said the girl as she fixed her bra into place. "Yesterday? What time is it?" questioned Matt. "About 7:45, said the girl. "Fuck." The single curse had her raising an eyebrow. "I have to be at the shop in like 30 minutes. They're supposed to be dropping some machines off at like 9, explained Matt. "Okay. Go shower. I'm going to hook up with Bonnie, but I'll bring breakfast," said Caroline, causing him to sigh but climb out of bed. "So what do you think?" questioned Elijah, speaking to a young-looking woman. He was currently in the IMF New York facility. The woman he was speaking to had long red hair along with bluish-green hazel eyes and was wearing a long-sleeved green top with a brown shirt that fell down to her calves. They were currently within an office that was filled with books. The only spaces clear of books were the space on the wall where a 32-inch screen was perched and the spot taken up by the clock. "I think it's possible," said the woman. "So you'll do it?" questioned the vampire. "Don't misunderstand, I said what you're asking may be possible. I did not say I would do so or allow anyone here to," stated the woman. "Nevertheless, I must ask you at least consider it. I've given my word I would try to find a way for this young lady to live," stated Elijah. "What you are asking is not something easily done," stated the woman just before there was a knock on the door and a blonde woman walked in. "Sorry, am I interrupting?" questioned the blonde. "No. Elijah here was just leaving," said the redhead. "Yes. Do think about my offer," stated Elijah before turning and leaving the room. Turning towards the blonde, she took a moment to look the other woman over. She wore a black leather bodysuit over which was a black corset. Her feet were covered by combat boots that went up to her thigh and secured with straps. To top it all off, she finished the look with a black trench coat. "So you've been shopping in Celine's closet, I take it," said the redhead. "So I take it you don't like it," said the blonde with a frown. Standing, the redhead moved around her desk and approached the blonde. "Now I didn't say that," said the redhead, pulling the blonde into a kiss that despite its short length was quite intense. "You've been with Faith recently. I can taste her," said the redhead after breaking the kiss. "Jealous?" teased the blonde. "Yes. So what else is going on, Buffy?" questioned the redhead, leaning back onto the edge of the desk. "Am I that easy to see through, Will?" questioned Buffy. "For me, yes. We've only been best friends since high school. The two had first met when they were 16 and as such juniors in high school. Having met in 1997, she had now known Buffy Summers for 13 years when the popular girl had approached the shy Willow Rosenberg at Sunnydale High. Buffy was unknown to her at the time. The Slayer, a mystical warrior chosen to face the forces of evil from her specialty of vampires to all sorts of demons. Willow had been by her side for a long time and they'd faced numerous challenges together, including the yearly Apocalyptic Challenge. Willow had only discovered that she was a witch when trying to help Buffy and had even brought the blonde back from the dead before. She had felt horrible, however, upon discovering she'd ripped her best friend from out of heaven. But despite that, along with many other things she had done, Buffy had forgiven her and become her biggest support in the aftermath of her nearly destroying the world. It wasn't long after that point when the two became lovers, and not long following that they would be joined by Faith, another Slayer that had been activated after Buffy had drowned. All three were also part of Naruto's harem, though they'd known him for years prior to that. Faith had been his lover on and off since she first arrived on the scene in 1998. It had been Faith that had unknowingly guided Willow to his bed years later, and of course Willow who had guided Buffy years later. "So what did he want?" questioned Buffy, breaking Willow from her thoughts and causing her to sigh. To say Damon was having a bad day would be an understatement. The start of the day had gone pretty well, having woken up with Rose beside him. Unfortunately, the day had gotten progressively worse from there with the knowledge that John Gilbert was back in town. If that hadn't been bad enough, the fact that Jules had approached Tyler Lockwood and told him about Mason had only made the situation worse. Stefan had of course tried to play peacemaker and failed, as the Lockwood had clearly thrown his lot in with the other werewolves. The situation had only been made worse when they found out they had Caroline and were now trying to ransom her back to them in exchange for Tyler. I told them all of this could have been avoided. All we had to do was kill Lockwood and we'd have avoided all of this mess," said Damon as he paced the length of the library. "Perhaps, but I think that Jules came for Mason. Now she wants revenge and Tyler is only a bonus to her," said Rose. "Well, I'm done playing either way. They want a war, we'll give them one," said Damon before reaching into his pocket and grabbing his phone. 45 minutes later, in the woods outside of Mystic Falls, Jules could be seen standing alone taking in the scenery. "I know you're out there," called the woman. She was greeted by silence for several long moments before Stefan made his appearance with Tyler. "Where's Caroline?" questioned the vampire. "Locked up tight," said the werewolf. "Let her go, and I'll release Tyler. It doesn't have to get any messier than it already has." "I'm not your enemy, Jules," said Stefan. "It's a little late to be waving the white flag, don't you think? This is your last chance. Leave town and no one has to get hurt," said Stefan. "I'm not leaving without Tyler. And he's free to make a decision once you've released Caroline," said Stefan just as Damon and Naruto arrived on the scene. "Our little brother the peacemaker. Since Stefan got here before us, we're gonna let him try it his way before I resort to our way, which is a lot messier. So give us Caroline," said Damon. "Let go of Tyler," stated Jules. "Enough. This isn't even a fight or a negotiation. Release Caroline or die," said Naruto, his words causing Jules to narrow her eyes. "I'm not so sure about that, tough guy," said Jules before whistling. As the sound echoed, several people emerged from the shadows, all of them armed with weapons from stakes to crossbows, and one guy even had a flamethrower. "Now let's try this again. Give us Tyler," Stefan responded by gritting his teeth and pushing the Lockwood heir towards her. He moved to keep going, only to suddenly stop as a pressure made itself known on the back of his neck where Naruto was gripping him. "Watch closely, boy. I'm going to kill all of them. Then once Caroline is released, I'm going to rip your heart from your chest and shove it down your throat," said the blonde, not bothering to hide his words before pushing him away. "So which one of you killed Mason?" questioned one of the wolves now surrounding them. "That be me," said Damon, not the slightest bit of regret in his tone. "Boys, make sure that one suffers." Hearing this, Naruto had enough, and faster than anyone could blink had exploded from his spot, only to appear in front of the wide-eyed Jules, grabbing her by the throat before slamming her against the RV she stood in front of so hard her body was embedded into it. Seeing her dazed, he pulled her out and with barely any effort tossed her away, where she slammed into and through the trunk of a tree. Turning around and without any hesitation, he lashed out with his right, a knife hand separating an attacker's head from his shoulders. Stepping casually to his left, he avoided the one who leapt from the top of the RV before his hand speared him through the back and he ripped his spine out. Seeing his brothers each fighting their own battles, he turned to find another opponent, and seeing one creeping up on Stefan, he threw the spine like a javelin, spearing the bastard through the chest. Darting across the ground, he caught a crossbow bolt just as it was nearing Damon's back, sending it back, nailing the shooter in the eye. A feminine cry of pain had him looking over to see Caroline pinned to the side of the RV with a pistol held to her head. A gunshot ringing out had his head darting to the left just in time to see Damon fall to the ground, having taken a shot to the back. Gritting his teeth, seeing more coming out of the woods, the blonde reached out with his magic, touching all but Tyler and causing them to scream out, clutching their heads in pain. Abruptly the screaming stopped and each of the werewolves collapsed to the ground like puppets with their strings cut. "When these bastards wake up, tell them I said get the hell out of my town," said Naruto, looking at Tyler, whose eyes were wide in shock. "Let's go," said the blonde, turning to his brothers and Caroline and leading them away. "Thanks for coming for me. I know you were with your mom," said Caroline nearly 30 minutes later in front of her house. I was already on my way back, so don't worry about. Said Naruto softly, getting a nod from the girl. You said when I was ready you'd start teaching me. I'd like to start now. Said the girl. Understandable. First things first though, you need to eat. Once you're full, your healing factor will start working on speeding up your recovery. Once that's done, we can start your training. Said the elder, getting a smile from her. Thank you. Said the girl softly before opening the door and walking inside. Hey, if you want I can have Bonnie and Elena come over. Said the elder Kitsune. It's okay. I just need some time, I'll be fine. Said the girl, getting a nod before they wished each other a good night and she closed the door. Stefan and Damon meanwhile had only been home for 5 minutes when their quiet moment was interrupted by a knock on the door. When he moved to open it, Damon felt his annoyance return upon seeing John Gilbert on his doorstep. What do you want? Questioned the vampire, in no mood for games. We didn't finish our conversation. Damon sighed, hearing this, before stepping aside to allow him inside. Stefan, who'd been sitting on a chair, took one look at him and drained his glass of bourbon before refilling it, and one for Damon as well. I've been thinking. Personal feelings aside, Damon, I think the three of you will do all you can to protect Elena. Said John as he entered. Well, we can at least agree on that much. Said the vampire, accepting the glass from Stefan. With that in mind, I come bearing gifts. Said John. As he said this, he removed a cloth-wrapped bundle from his pocket and placed it on the table. Once it was unwrapped, the two vampires found themselves looking upon a silver dagger along with a vial full of some kind of powder. And what is this? Questioned Stefan. This is how you kill an original. In this vial is ash from a white oak tree that dates back to the genesis of the originals. The dagger must be dipped into the ash, and then plugged into their heart. Said the Gilbert. How exactly do you know this? Questioned Damon. Isabel. She's very good at finding out things. But, of course, you know that. Speaking of, where is she? Questioned Stefan. Let's just say if she accomplishes what she's attempting, Klaus will never set foot in Mystic Falls. Where Elena's concerned, you and I are on the same side. How's Caroline? Questioned Bonnie as she snuggled into Naruto's side. She'll be fine. They treated her like a vampire, and as a kitsune she's a lot tougher than that. Said Naruto with a sigh. At the moment he was sitting on the couch within the Bennett house. Bonnie was of course sitting beside him, wearing only a black tank top and dark green panties. He had come over almost immediately after seeing Caroline home. Of course, having just been thoroughly brutal with the werewolves, he'd taken a shower almost as soon as he arrived. Now clean they were, catching upon the last day while ignoring the television playing in the background. How's your mom holding up? Questioned the girl. Pretty good, all things considered. I think she'd be a lot worse if she didn't know for sure she would be seeing him again soon. Said the blonde. So Boruto tells me you have 2 new brothers. Said the girl. Yeah, Lucas and Nathan. Those were not fun conversations to have. I don't think they were ready to have their worldviews so shattered. Said the blonde. And what about you? Questioned the girl. It's nothing. I have several siblings, it wasn't even a surprise. Any time a pair settles on a mortal world in any realm, that pair finds each other. I actually expected more kids. Explained Naruto. As the show they were actually waiting on started, the questions stopped and they relaxed into each other to enjoy the show. Chapter 12. Immortality. In definitive terms, it was an eternal life, the ability to live forever. For thousands of years and perhaps even longer, mankind has been in search of it. As one who has lived for as long as he had and walked the surface of many worlds, dimensions and universes, Naruto had seen many attempts at attaining immortality. For the most part, those who attempt to become immortal fail miserably, yet despite this he had seen immortality in many forms. The first time he'd come across someone who had possessed a form of immortality, it had been when he was a child in the form of Orochimaru, the snake Sannin. In his quest to master all of the jutsu ever created, the Sannin had experimented on countless people, which had culminated in the creation of his Fushi Tenshi Jutsu, living corpse reincarnation technique, which allowed him to transfer his mind and soul from one body to another. This technique, however, was flawed in that the host body would only last for up to 3 years before his soul was ejected from the body. The next time he'd run across anyone who had attained a form of immortality, it was in the form of two individuals from the criminal organization known as Akatsuki that were collectively known as the zombie duo, Kakuzu and Hidan. Kakuzu had his immortality in the form of a kinjutsu he had stolen from his native village during his defection that was called Jongu, Earth Grudge Fear, which transforms the user's body into something similar to that of a rag doll, held together by hundreds of thick black threads. This was done by stealing the organs from the bodies of others and incorporating them into his own body to extend his life. In his case, he would take their hearts and could contain up to 4 spare hearts, meaning he lived with 5 and could only die if all 5 were destroyed. Hidan was part of a religious cult that had worshipped a demon named Jashin whom they'd somehow mistaken as a god. Somehow or other Jashin had granted Hidan a form of immortality in that he could not age nor could he be killed even if his head was parted from his body. In return for this gift, Hidan would ritualistically murder people as a sacrifice to Jashin. When he had encountered the two, he'd been 16, and while he'd managed to kill Kakuzu, Shikamaru had only managed to decapitate Hidan. For good measure, they'd cut up his body and buried them miles apart from each other, with him taking it a step forward and placing seals over each part. Despite this, Hidan had lived like that for nearly 20 years before Jashin himself made an appearance, being summoned by the cultists. In the end, he'd killed the demon and with his death stripped the cultists of the immortality he'd granted them. Regardless of this, however, the point was before he was even 20 years old, he'd seen people boasting semi-immortality and reliant immortality. Since then, he had seen and heard about many other ways to achieve immortality, be it by magical means, scientific means, divine blessings, and demonic empowerment. However, despite this, he knew that no matter what manner that they had attained it, there were loopholes, since he knew that absolute immortality was held by very few entities in the entirety of existence. That said, immortality was something that came in levels. The first was semi-immortality, and it was pretty much the basic level. This was one in which a person was generally unable to age but could still die via disease, wounds, or by substances such as poison. The second level was reliant immortality, in which case one's immortality was anchored by another source. He had seen many examples of this form as well, especially during his time as a pirate or on other worlds. This level basically made it where one simply does not die, as either the soul would not leave the body or it would not move on until whatever anchors it has been either destroyed or purified. The third level was true immortality, where one could not be killed in any conventional manner and would have to be rendered mortal to be killed for the most part. This one, however, was tricky, as if one's soul or mind was still mortal, it was only a matter of time before they sought out ways to kill themselves. He knew a family who had this type of immortality. These would be the current servants of the Sky Mother Zuzushi. There were also a lot of gods across the multiverse that had this form of immortality, though they too could be killed by another god, goddess, or even a demigod if they were strong enough. The next level was called Unfettered. This one was usually not only immortal but invulnerable to harm as well. This one was rare, however it also had its weaknesses, as anyone who could manipulate souls would simply have to remove the soul from the body. There were also those who had mastered time manipulation, as they could simply erase a person such as this from existence. Finally, there was absolute immortality, and belonged to one who was simply eternal, incapable of being killed in any way, shape or form, including soul and time manipulation. The only way to really get rid of someone on this level was pretty much by sealing them away. "So what level are we on?" questioned Caroline, interrupting the lesson that Naruto was giving her. "Well, I'm at the absolute level. Right now you're at the true immortal level. Your mind and soul are both immortal as well. This means you can still be killed, however in your case your body would simply destroy itself and you'd wake up at my home in the spirit realm. At that point you'd pretty much be incapable of coming back here for a certain length of time depending on how strong you are, so try not get yourself killed," said Naruto. At the moment the two could be found within the woods surrounding the old savageThor property. It had been a little over a week since Caroline had been freed from the grasp of the werewolves and was the third day of the girls' training. The reason for the impromptu lesson was due to Caroline wanting to know how immortality actually worked considering her new status. "So listen about your training," started the elder, causing her to look up at him. I've been watching you closely the last few days and I've got to say you've impressed me. I expected a lot of complaining out of you, but you haven't done any. I was initially only going to teach you a few things, but I'm considering taking you on as a true apprentice. What does that mean? Questioned the girl. Basically that instead of just getting you in shape and teaching you how to fight, I'll take you on as my personal student. This means I'll be putting you through the same kind of training that Matt got, just more intense. At this, Caroline actually paused with wide eyes. After she had finally come clean to Matt about her new nature as a kitsune, he had done the same with some of the things he'd been holding secret from her. Learning that Naruto was actually Matt's dad had pretty much thrown her for a loop. However, hearing of the things he had learned over the last several months had gotten her more than a little curious. While this was happening, Bonnie was also hard at work, only her work was a lot less physical at the moment. At the moment she was sitting back with her eyes closed as the music played through the studio. With the exception of Tim and Missy, the studio was closed as they were the only ones in attendance. She had been told that some artists tended to travel heavy even for studio sessions, however she rather liked this more closed session as everyone in the room had a purpose. "That's fire," said Tim as the track finished playing. "I just feel like it's missing something," said Bonnie. "You're right. That second verse, we can spice it up a little, add to it," said Tim. "The bridge needs work too," said Missy thoughtfully. "Yeah, now that I hear it back. Maybe it was good when I wrote it, but that was 2 years ago," said Bonnie with a frown. "No, it's good, just doesn't fit the track," said Missy. Years later, Bonnie would look back on this moment and realize this was one of the better moments of her life. Willow Rosenberg was amongst other things the most powerful witch on the planet. It helped that her knowledge of magic stretched much further than any witch on the planet as well. Though she didn't look it and no one would ever believe it, she was much older than her birth certificate would lead one to believe. That was of course a benefit to being in a relationship with Naruto. When she had lost control of her magic, or rather when she had succumbed to her addiction, Naruto had taken her to other dimensions, other versions of Earth, where she had studied with and under some of the greatest magical practitioners to have ever lived. She had been de-aged and taken to what they called the Potterverse, where magic was manipulated much differently. There she had attended Hogwarts from the time she was 11 years of age until she had graduated 7 years later. Following that, she had been taken to another universe and trained by a man who most knew only as the Ancient One, who she had called fondly Master Yao. Her parents, like many of those born and raised in Sunnydale, had eventually succumbed to the negative influence generated by an active Helmuth. While they had never been abusive, they had grown to become distant, almost negligent when it came to her. Master Yao had been very much how she imagined a grandfather figure would be and had taught her more than magic. It was with his guidance that she had finally grown into who she was as a witch, and more importantly as a person. When the reality spheres had been broken, she had been one of the main ones who had fixed the problem. Thankfully, the spheres were only representations of the other realities, and while the realities themselves had been in some very real danger of destruction due to that, they had still been alive if badly damaged. Thanks to that, she had been able to connect her mind with the most powerful magic practitioners in each realm and make it so that they would in effect merge together, as by that point none of them could survive on their own for much longer. To make them even more powerful, she had taken it a step further and linked the new reality even closer to this one. Having once been home to the elemental nations and the Shinju, this particular version of Earth was much stronger than many of the others, and as such had been able to use the nature chakra that it still generated to heal the cracks that had still been in the new reality. That, however, was a story in and of itself. Still, it spoke of the power in which she possessed. "Getting some reading in, I see," said a voice, breaking Elijah's attention away from the screen to see Buffy Summers leaning against the doorframe to his office, now wearing a pair of black pants and a burgundy top. "Indeed I have. I fear I may have misjudged you and your friends. Naruto suggested to me I read up on you all. I must admit to be glad to have done so," stated Elijah, causing her to raise an eyebrow. "Tell me, have you ever heard of the Strix?" Meanwhile, at the werewolf camp, the group of survivors could be seen placing the bodies of their dead next to a bonfire, knowing that the fire would eventually spread to consume the remains of their slain comrades. This was the scene another individual came upon as a dark blue Dodge Ram pulled up to the area before the truck cut off and the figure climbed out. The figure turned out to be that of a man who had a slim body tone and stood at about 5 feet 10 inches and wore a pair of rather worn light blue jeans and a black Led Zeppelin t-shirt. He had short-cut red hair that was so light that it was nearly orange and a full beard that was thankfully not very thick and blue eyes. Oz greeted Jules as he approached, giving him a quick hug. What happened? Questioned the man. We made a play and took a girl that we thought was a vampire. She turned out to be something else, but the savageThors came for her. As you can see, they took down quite a few of us, but eventually our numbers began to overwhelm them. Then the adopted brother dropped us, magically, said the woman, causing him to frown. Adopted brother? Questioned Oz. As far as he knew, there were only two. Yeah, Tyler called him Naruto, said the woman, causing him to tense. Describe him, said the man quickly. Blonde hair, blue eyes, about your height, said the woman. Markings on his cheeks? Questioned Oz. Yeah, now that you mention it, he had these 3 linear markings, reminded me of whiskers actually, said the woman, causing him to snort. You and everyone else he lets see them, said the man. You know him? Questioned the woman. We went to high school together. He was being merciful, said the man. You call this merciful? Questioned Jules in shock. For him, yes. He left quite a few of you alive, said Oz. Their conversation, however, was cut off as 2 more people approached, both of them men. One of them was the tallest of the bunch, standing at 6 feet 1 with short-cut brown hair and blue eyes. The other man was about 5 feet 8 and had longer brown hair and brown eyes. You want to tell her? Said the first man, who Jules knew as Brady. Tell me what? Questioned Jules. Let me just preface this with a big disclaimer that screams, I should have known better, said the second man. What's going on, Stevie? Questioned Jules. When Brady told me what the Tyler kid said about Mason being here for the Moonstone, something clicked. There was this moment back in Florida when I suspected Mason was up to something because he was banging that hot vampire chick Kathy and he didn't want anyone to know. And, your point is? Prodded the woman, her tone carrying a strong hint of impatience. That is the point, Jules. It's the sun and moon curse. Mason was asking me all kinds of questions about it, if it could be broken, and when that evil man witch showed up last night, double click. Witches, vampires, Moonstone. They're putting everything in place to break the curse, said Stevie, causing her to don a pensive expression. Maybe, but they still need a powerful witch to do it, said Oz. Your friend Naruto definitely has the power, said Jules. Yes, but firstly, he's not witch, though he's been known to take them under his wings from time to time. Secondly, he'd never break it himself. He'd consider such a thing beneath him. It'd be like using a high-pressure fire hose to water your plants. That said, he won't interfere if someone is attempting to break it, though. May even give a few pointers if he likes the group enough, said Oz. Regardless, we can't let them break it, even if it means killing every last vampire in this town, said Brady. Meanwhile, within the gym of the IMF facility, Matt could be found going to town on a heavy bag. He had gathered a bit of a crowd, as all could see his hands were merely taped, but there were no gloves to speak of. Despite this, he hit the bag with force, pure anger shining out of his eyes as he worked out his frustrations regarding Caroline's brief kidnapping and Tyler's role in it. Of course, he had no idea that his current method of working off his frustration had drawn quite the crowd, as his mind was instead focused inward as he fired off body shot after body shot into Tyler's imaginary frame until finally he fired a straight with his right that hit with such force that the chain that snapped, causing the bag to go flying, spilling sand from the busted bag out until it slammed into a wall and fell to the floor. You all right, Matt? Panting, the teen looked up to see Boruto approaching him. Despite the fact that he was a very busy man, he still reserved 2 hours of his day every day to time in the gym. He had gotten to know him quite a bit over the last few months, as well as a few of his other siblings. Boruto, however, by virtue of being the eldest, liked to look in on all of them and was always up to listen if any of them just needed someone to talk to. Yeah, I guess things are just getting a bit tense at home, said the teen. I heard you guys had a problem with some werewolves, said Boruto, leading the teen away from the mess. They kidnapped my girlfriend and my best friend helped them do it. Hearing this, Boruto decided it was time to teach his younger brother exactly how it is an Uzumaki handles anger management. In a higher level of the base, Naruto could be seen sitting behind a desk leaning back in his chair as he blew a cloud of smoke from his mouth. His right hand held one of his King of Denmark cigars, and while he normally didn't partake much in this particular pastime, he was in a celebratory mood, having just finished the final draft of the final chapter in the 4th book of his autobiography. While he had technically finished the book a few months back, he had made it a point to go back and trim the fat off the things, as he didn't want to let anyone too far into his thoughts. Hinata would of course be able to read the original, but that was it. After that she'd read the final version, and from there it would be sent to the publisher. Closing out the file and removing the flash drive, he soon had it sealed safely inside a sealing scroll. Taking another drag of the cigar, he held his breath for a few moments before releasing, allowing the smoke to pour from his lungs. Channeling a small bit of chakra to his right index finger, he slashed the air, causing a small tear to appear. The tear was actually the manifestation of his own personal pocket dimension, the idea of which he'd gotten quite some time ago from watching a cartoon. With that done, he turned his attention to the files that had been sitting on his desk awaiting his attention. O'Connor had, true to his prediction, sprung Dom as soon as he realized that the FBI had reneged on their deal. Dom had been sentenced to 25 years to life and had been on a transport bus when O'Connor and Mia had sprung him. At the moment they were all running in different directions, but he was keeping eyes on them, and Dom knew to call if he needed anything. Lucas and Nathan were also both coming along well. Both had declined awakening their powers, but he had however awakened their healing factors to the same level as Matt's, which in this instance had completely cured Lucas of his HCM. There was also the trial of Daniel Scott to look forward to. Because he really wanted the bastard, he had called in the best team that he could to ensure the bastard would rot. The first and easiest to get had been Lilla, another he'd called had been Annalise Keating and his ringer Jack McCoy. Well, truthfully only Lilla and Annalise had been his calls. Jack had been Boruto. Still, he was a good one to head the trial as a former executive assistant district attorney. Because Daniel was actually the mayor of the small town of Tree Hill, it had actually been even easier than they had assumed to make his trial federal. Sure, the man would have his own lawyers assembled by the time of his trial, but by then their own team would have things well in hand. Closing the file on that, he moved on to the next one, and upon opening it was greeted to a picture of Kelly Donovan, which was apparently just an alias. Her real name was apparently Amanda, and she had been a rising star in something called PsyOps. Eventually she partnered with a guy called Percival Rose and started something called Division, an off-the-books government black ops program, only from the look of things they'd gone rogue some time ago. As he looked over the file, he couldn't help but grimace at just some of what the group had been up to, not the least of which was Nikolai Udinov, and from what he could tell had been a classic betrayal power play. Along with this were many other assassinations, both political and otherwise. Of course he'd already known about Division, however he hadn't had any clue that Kelly was so wrapped up in things. Whatever the case, he didn't have to worry about it too much. They already had Nikita and Alex working on that. Aside from that, the only other project he was keeping his eye on was the mission that Hunt's team had been on. Luckily the team had been able to get free and clear from the Kremlin before it exploded. Despite this, the Russians were still blaming Americans for the attack, as they'd apparently intercepted transmissions from American operatives. Whatever the case, the team was currently in Dubai trying to intercept the sale of the codes to a nuclear device. Hopefully this mission would go much more smoothly, but he'd have to wait to find out more information on that. The next few days went by in a bit of a blur. For the most part things had been pretty much quiet with the exception of that very first day. Apparently the werewolves hadn't taken his message to heart, as they'd attacked both Stefan and Damon. Stefan, who'd been at the Gilbert family lake house with Elena, had ripped the heart out of his attacker. Damon, however, had been jumped and in the end had to be saved by Elijah before the remaining wolves had finally fled. Needless to say, when he'd gotten the news and had his sit down with Oz, he'd let his old friend know that he was in no way pleased with being ignored, and that if Jules ever set foot in any town he was personally in, her life was forfeit. Aside from that, Damon had hosted a dinner party that had ended with Alaric stabbing Elijah with the white oak ash dagger. The first time it hadn't put him down for long, in fact about 5 minutes after it was removed he had recovered and disappeared. The second time, however, it was Elena who stabbed him when he'd come to collect her at the lake house. With him down it had broken the compulsion that kept Catherine in the cave, and as such she'd been free to leave. Bonnie, however, had been paid a visit by one Jonas Martin, who had taken it upon himself to seal away her magic for some reason. After she called him and told him what happened, he'd broken the seal and sent her to New York to study with Willow. After that, however, he'd gone to visit Jonas and shown him his displeasure for his hubris. He'd also warned both him and his son Luca that should either of them approach Bonnie again, the only way the man would see his daughter again would be to identify the corpse. Aside from that, he had been focused mostly on family obligations that he felt were actually important. He had finally introduced Bonnie to Hinata, and of course the two had hit it off quite quickly. They had a quiet dinner with just the three of them, and Hinata, the gentle soul she was, had rather easily gotten the young witch to relax and open up. That was an important first step, as he knew that once she was done with basic and intermediate level training in her magic, Hinata would be taking over the girls' training. Following that, they'd return to Mystic Falls, where he'd been able to enjoy watching Catherine messing about with the heads of Damon, Stefan and Elena. He had rather casually pointed out that he had known exactly what would happen if Elijah was immobilized as he was. Watching Damon squirm when the other two realized that the ebony-haired savageThor had neglected to contact him had been fairly amusing. After that little side task, he and Hinata had a nice dinner with his mother, Lucas, Nathan, Nathan's wife Haley, and his mother Deb. There they had given a Cliff Notes version of who they were and how they had come to be to the new family members. While he was doing that, however, Stefan, the naive fool that he was, had taken it upon himself to try and cut a deal with the Martins. He had walked away naively secure in his deal with Jonah Martin, while Jonah had walked away already plotting their demise, which led to the current time. At the savageThor house, the pair of Damon and Catherine could be seen, each of them engaged in their own reading, Damon lying on the couch and Catherine seated within a chair. As one, the two of them look up and glance around them before eyeing each other before shrugging. Unknown to them, invisible to their eyes, Luca Martin stood just before them and breathed out a quiet sigh upon them looking away. Elena and Damon. They're reading, said Luca. Good. If Elijah's there, you'll sense him. Stay focused, came the voice of his father in his mind. Of course they weren't actually speaking telepathically. In truth, Luca was currently using a family spell that allowed for astral projection, and Jonas was the one channeling the magic since he couldn't actually do it, and it was a two-person spell. The plan was actually quite simple. Using the spell, they would be able to sneak into the house, and if Elijah was here, they would be able to free him from whatever confinement he was under. While they had been told Elijah was dead, the both of them knew that as an original there wasn't anything that could actually kill him. As such, whatever was holding him, he would remove it, thus freeing Elijah to kill the savageThors and the rest of their brood. With that thought in mind, he moved on, leaving the room and sensing out Elijah. Meanwhile, now bored Catherine looked up and glanced around again. What is it? Questioned Damon, not really caring though. I'm bored, said the woman, looking over to see what he was reading. Damon was actually reading one of the Gilbert journals written by Jonathan Gilbert Sr. a century ago. Apparently Elena had found the journals within the family lake house and brought them back with her when she and Stefan had returned from their weekend away. Emily Bennett was taken by the council today. They kidnapped her from her home and took her to the same location her ancestors were burned 100 years ago. Read Catherine. So Emily died on the site of the massacre, too. Does it say where? Questioned the elder vampire with a frown. They had discovered, thanks to the Martins, that Elijah had been looking for the site of a witch massacre. Apparently when a witch dies, an especially violent death, the place is marked by their energy. Apparently in this place a number of them had been killed, which was why it was called a massacre. Anyway, according to the Martins, it was possible that by tapping into that pool of energy a witch would have enough power to kill an original. Nope, said the savageThor almost cheerfully at denying her information as he snatched the book out of her reach when she moved for it. You know this whole friendly, cooperative thing? What of it? Questioned Catherine. I don't buy it, said Damon. Don't care, said the elder, bringing him up short. Thing is, I'm not here for you, or Stefan for that matter. What we had was fun, but it was over a century ago and it was never serious to begin with. I'm here for Naruto and I'll be here as long as he lets me stay," said the vampire before standing and leaving the room, causing Damon to scowl just as Stefan came in. As she moved to the basement for a snack, Catherine was grumbling, if only inwardly. She was honestly getting tired of this game, as despite their best efforts the brats still weren't willing to take advantage of available resources or even thinking to do so. They had made it clear they really didn't want her help, and they hadn't even thought to ask Naruto if he knew anything yet again. As she reached the basement, she moved to the fridge that was kept in the area and removed a blood bag, yet another thing she was tired of. Naruto had told her not too long ago that he was in possession of something that could change a vampire into a kitsune, however she had to earn it, which was why she was currently helping them with this current endeavor. Finishing off her snack and tossing the now empty bag into the bin, she turned and made her way out of the basement area. As she was leaving, however, she stopped and looked into the room that held Elijah. He was actually lying on the ground, the dagger still embedded in his chest. There was actually a large mound of dirt dug up beside him, as apparently the original plan had been to bury him, but as they couldn't remove the dagger without waking him, Damon and Stefan had decided to leave him there for the time being. It was as she turned away from the room that she caught movement out of the corner of her eye, and seeing the dagger actually pulling itself out, sped over and pushed it back into place. As she held it down, she could feel it fighting her. Feel the opposing force trying to overpower her, yet despite this her senses were still telling her that there was no one else in the room. As such, this told her immediately this was the work of magic. Suddenly she feels the opposing force release the dagger, and releasing it herself she began to look around, and at the sound of a crash whirled around to see a wooden chair suddenly broken. "Damon," called the woman, more than a little annoyed that she had to call for help. Before she could do more, however, her eyes widened, and with speed called forth by urgency, she shifted her position just as one of the legs of the chair, now a makeshift stake, was driven into her body, only barely missing her here. This was the sight that Damon arrived to, causing his eyes to widen in shock. "Catherine," spoke the savageThor, eyeing the sight with confusion. "What happened?" questioned Damon, kneeling down and helping her remove the stake from her chest. Motioning with her head over at the dagger, Damon was greeted to the sight of it slowly being pulled from Elijah's body. Eyes narrowing, Damon took a step back towards the door, and Catherine gave a bloody grin at figuring out his plan. In a quick motion, Damon had snatched up the flame gun he'd been using earlier in the day trying to burn Elijah and turned it on the area, bathing it in flames. While this was happening, things at the grill were a lot more festive. In an effort to build up their patronage, the management had decided to have a series of events going forward. On this night they were actually having an open mic night, and already plenty of people had gone up to touch the stage. "Pretty good turnout," said Matt from his position at the bar. "I know, and quite a few talents," said Caroline. There had been quite a few singers who'd done cover versions of songs, and more than a few who'd done a few poems. All in all, the night was looking like it would be a success for the grill, especially as people were obviously enjoying themselves. "All right, next up to grace the stage, give it up for Ms. Bonnie Bennett," called the announcer, causing the couple to pause and look on with wide eyes as their friend went up. "This should be good," said Elena as she watched her best friend go up. "Did you know about this?" questioned Jeremy. "I did. Soon as we found out about this event, we felt like it would be a good way for her to get her feet wet," said Naruto. As she took to the stage, Bonnie took a moment to take in the sights from her new vantage point. For several moments she was silent, then the audio track hit and she locked eyes with Naruto and began to sing. "Rumor Willis, crazy, crazy for you. Crazy love, I can't go without you. Got us doing things we ain't supposed to do. Boy, you crept in my heart, tore my whole world apart. And now you're all I need, you're all I need, hey hey, hey hey. Mountains high, and no valley low. He can make a woman lose all control. God only knows what this troubled road lies in front of me, hey hey, hey hey. My darlin', there's no limit to my lovin'. You got everything I need, and then I'm wanting. I'm not used to giving my heart and soul just to be hanging around your love. Oh baby, I'm such a fool, crazy, Crazy, my heart is burning for you. Crazy, crazy. The stupid things that I do. Crazy, crazy, I do them all 'cause of you. Boy, what the hell did I do? I'm crazy, crazy for you. Angels smile with those devilish eyes. Boy, you took me by surprise. No one understands that I give my right hand, I give up everything, give everything, hey hey, hey hey. Misery I feel when you're not around, boy, you turn my head upside down. Now I'm flying so high and I can't justify what's going on with me, what's going on with me. My darling, there's no limit to my loving. You got everything I need, and then I'm wanting. I'm not used to giving my heart and soul just to be hanging around your love. Oh, tell me I'm such a fool. Crazy, crazy. My heart is burning for you. Crazy, crazy. The stupid things that I do. Crazy, crazy. I do them all 'cause of you. Boy, what the hell did I do? I'm crazy, crazy for you. As she finished, the two found that they weren't the only ones to have stood to their feet in applause. As she descended from the stage, Bonnie found herself pulled into a kiss that, if anything, had the applause increase in its intensity. Later that night found Naruto entering the basement level of the savageThor boarding house. After Bonnie's performance, the two had stayed at the grill for another hour before their departure. After that, he had taken Bonnie home, with only one important detour, and then had taken great pride and pleasure in fucking her into a blissful unconsciousness. With a bottle of Patron and 2 glasses in hand, he entered the room that held Elijah before lazily conjured a chair for him to sit on. We're clear. At his words, Elijah's eyes slowly opened before he sat up to see Naruto with a drink already extended out towards him. Accepting the drink, he took a breath, and Naruto watched as the veins that symbolized desiccation receded from his features and a bit of color returns to him. You know, that's quite the trick, said Naruto, taking a seat. Yes, it's something I came up with some time ago. I slept through a couple decades the last time I did it, however, said Elijah before taking a drink. How long were you actually out? Questioned the blonde. About 6 hours before the dagger's effects wore off. After that, I went into my death trance, said Elijah, something Naruto made a mental note of. Right, are you aware of anything that happened while you were out? Questioned Naruto. Only what happened around me, such as Damon trying to set me on fire. The heat at least made me more comfortable. Well, the Martins are dead. It seems young Luca was talked into trying to remove the dagger in an astral form earlier tonight. He managed to stab Katarina in the chest with a makeshift stake before Damon set him on fire, said the blonde. So my compulsion broke after all, said Elijah with a slight frown. Yes, but we figured that would happen. Perhaps, however, I was hoping it would hold. At least we found out in a testing environment. What of Jonas? Said Elijah before transitioning into a question. Stefan and Katharina killed him. It seems they took exception to his actions against them tonight. After all, as far as they know, you'd have killed them all if awakened, said Naruto. Well, that's one problem taken care of, said Elijah. What was the deal there anyway? Questioned Naruto with a frown. He didn't really care, he was just curious. Luca has a twin sister named Greta. Apparently in his family it is tradition in the case of fraternal twins of different sexes that the male drain the female of all of their magic to increase their own power. Jonas has apparently been grooming Luca for this purpose since they were children. Their mother took exception and requested aid from my brother, explained Elijah. How is it the mother knew of Klaus? Questioned Naruto. She's the day manager of the Bellagio, said Elijah. Klaus is on the move, said Naruto, absently refilling the vampire's glass. I take it we are out of town then, said Elijah. We just made it. I've already swapped the fake moonstone with the real one and it's already been altered by Willow, said the blonde. Did you ever capture a werewolf? Questioned Elijah. No, however, here's what I'm thinking. The two would be up and plotting for the next 30 minutes before Naruto left, and Elijah would resume his death trance with no one the wiser. Meanwhile, things at the Gilbert house were quiet. Elena could be found in the kitchen eating out of a tub of ice cream after the night that she'd had. What had looked like a great night had turned into a tragic one when Jonas had crashed the grill. Stefan had gotten her out at the first chance he got. By that point, Naruto and Bonnie had already left, and she honestly didn't know if that was a good thing or nor. Whatever the case, she had been escorted home with Jeremy by Damon only to find Stefan and Catherine coming down the stairs with Stefan lugging Jonas's corpse over his shoulder. Almost immediately after they had left, she'd called Jenna wanting to hear her voice and make sure she was all right. If anything, she was even more happy that she now knew the truth and was out of the danger zone, which was at this point apparently anywhere around her. Of course, she couldn't actually tell her aunt the full story of what was going on over the phone, but just the conversation had injected some normality into her life. It was, however, the ringing of the doorbell that broke her from her musings. Standing from the table and regretfully leaving her ice cream behind, she made her way to the door and opens it. "Hello, Elena. It's good to see you again." At the sight of the woman on the other side, she honestly wanted to scream. For standing before her was none other than Isabel.